Everybody please stand for Pledge of Allegiance.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, tonight is hearing number 8 on appeal number 2023-01. Mr. Manzi is running a few minutes late, I'm told, so he'll be here momentarily. Mr. DeFelice, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, so where we left it off was with William Sterley's, I'm not even sure, I guess we're on cross with the township, I guess technically is where we left it off.
I think Mr. Olin
transcript.
withdrew his
At least the last question I think he did, but I'm saying as far as where we kind of left it off was there. I'm not sure if there's a more organized way to do it, if you wanted to let Doug, but I know you have a preliminary issue you wanted to bring up. But the hope is that we can get through Mr. Sterley tonight and then Mr. Elliott tonight as well. I mean, we shouldn't, I'm gonna kind of give it a little bit of a short lease. I don't want Mr. Sterley regurgitating the same preliminary information that we went through before. That would, I don't think would be helpful for anyone.
I was planning to do some, but very quickly.
Well, I have a motion before Mr. Blasey puts
Okay.
Mr. Strolley back on the stick.
I understand, and we'll address that.
And I
But
have a reason, I'll explain why I'll do it. But, well, I thought we left it with Mr. Kaplan completing his initial cross-examination and then going forward to other
Is your mic
parties in the
on,
board.
Attorney Blasey? Is your mic on?
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I thought the way it ended, Chad, was that Mark had completed his cross and that other parties with status could then question, as well as the board, Mr. Sterley before I did redirect.
from my recollection and from my review of the transcript, from what I recall happening, at least during Mr. Kaplan's cross, was a lot of the answers were, I didn't review some of the things that were presented by Mr. Kaplan, right? Specifically those MLS listings, I think there were, I don't know, 10, 11 of them. I don't remember exactly how many there were. But those specific, and then when Mr. Kaplan was done and Mr. Ulrich had some questions, Mr. Sterley seemed to suggest that he did review them and he did have an opinion on them. So I think,
Well, he does.
okay, and that's what's fair. But if that's the case, I think Mr. Kaplan should have an opportunity to before. I know, Mark. I know you have the motion, but I'm saying, I think Mr. Kaplan should have the opportunity to cross-examine after he testifies.
Right.
Okay.
And the other thing is, I have a motion pending to strike all of that as being without foundation. It was
That motion is bizarre.
I reviewed the motion. Here's my conundrum. Is he indicated in the transcript that he did review them but essentially disregarded them, so to speak? I'm not going to testify for him, but that is kind of how I interpreted what the transcript said. So there was some at least indication that he did review, he did see them, or at least all of them, but I think one, right? And they are a matter of public record. I mean, the sales.
That's the point. They are, Mr. Strolley used multiple listing materials. I use multiple listing materials. They're probative. I responded to the motion that they be stricken, and I've never seen a motion like that before, zoning hearing board before.
And I've never seen incompetent materials put forward as evidence without substantiation and foundation.
You
we
don't
would love to talk about
try
them.
zoning cases.
All right. We're going to waste time getting into personal. I don't want to do that. But here's the situation. If you have evidence, if he did review them and there was something that was cherry picked or however you want to characterize it, then I think. But the fact that they exist and that they are public record. I mean, what sort of foundation would he have to lay?
We're happy to have him testify about it, okay? But just my understanding is that he was looking at them as it was being handed to him. That was the first time he had seen them,
That's-
and he had some initial reaction.
Hang on, but that
You
was
presented them
after,
Said.
hang
It's
on,
not what he said.
Hang on,
And I
hang-
have the transcript.
hang on. But
He
that,
said he
You're
saw them.
confusing people all
I'm
the time,
not.
Mark. You presented age 28, 29, and 30 on the spot, and he looked at them on the spot and had some initial reaction. He's since done more looking, and we are happy to tell you what he found out and wishes to report to this board.
All right, I'd like to, may
But it'll
I?
take a little
hang on,
time.
no. I have a couple of issues. He testified that he reviewed all of the sales within a certain 2-mile radius, right? That's what was the testimony.
No.
His
Yes.
entire report was based on the sales
Yes.
within this 2-mile radius versus
He
the
did
comparison with the
yes.
rest of the Lehigh Valley. That was the entire report,
He did.
right?
I have copies of that part of the testimony,
I've got,
and I'd like to distribute
All right,
it.
I'm not getting anywhere, so go ahead, Mark, if you want to, just so we get through this motion, go ahead.
I asked at the last hearing that Mr. Stroley's testimony be stricken. And I asked that it be stricken because he admitted that he saw these 12 multiple listings. He said, I saw them in a bunch. And then he testified, and I'm going to hand this out. This man testified that he didn't bring them here because they supported my position. I'm going to show it to you in black and white. And if an expert comes and says to you, as he has, that he did all of this checking and he looked at all of the relevant stuff, and he said 3 times, I'm unbiased. And then when I called him on it, he had 3 multiple listing pieces, none of them within the right time frame. And I showed him these 12 pieces, and no point in my telling you what it is. I'm going to read it. This man is not competent to testify before this board as an expert because he's not truthful.
this is,
I want to be heard on this.
Hang on, he hasn't finished, you can have, you'll have a
I do want to be
chance.
heard on that.
You'll have a chance.
I don't have that transcript with me. Where is it?
So this is only 4 pages. It starts on page 782 by Mr. Olin. Mr. Stroley, in your testimony, you said you needed to provide clarification with respect to the issues raised by Mr. Kaplan.
Okay.
Can you please provide that clarification to the zoning board with regard to the individual parcels? That's my 12 parcels. Okay, can you read back what the question was? I said that a few times. Mr. Olin, well, can you please explain? Let's start with what
page?
you have that's marked A30, right? Let's do it that way. That would be the big list provided by Mr. Kaplan. Answer, yes. Now, Mr. Kaplan went through that list with you and provided that as testimony with respect to the price, and provided that as testimony with respect to the price. Can you please explain why you do not believe that to be appropriate? And here we start to get into it. Well, there's 115 properties that sold in Upper Mount Bethel based on the time frame that he used, but he only used 12. Mr. DeFelice, so you knew about those properties, or you don't know about those properties? Answer. Again, I quick ran what properties sold in Upper Mount Bethel between 250 and 600, that's 1,000. And there's 115 units there. Mr. DeFelice, including these, answer. Including that, Mr. DeFelice, so you did look at these. He says they were bunched in. And I said they were what? What word? Bunched in? And he said, in other words, if I may explain, okay, you're going to have outliers. Now listen to this. That fall right within the 100% sale price. But you have to look at the majority of the sales, 115 properties. Is it your testimony that these are outliers? Yes. Here we go. Chad, why did you determine these are outliers? Now here's the hard one. Because interestingly, they all came in at exactly what Mr. Kaplan was looking for. Okay? Do you believe these properties to not be directly affected by the construction of this? I think that was Chad's question. Most of them. Mr. DeFelice, how can you possibly answer this if his testimony is that he needs time to look at these? I'm sorry, but I cannot let this evidence in. This is not. How can he testify to this if his testimony is that he did not look at any of these properties? I don't understand. I don't understand. And then Doug chimes in. Well, look, I'm testifying and offering an explanation. How about that? As to why I think he has to go back. I think what he's saying is he is looking at an aggregate set of data, and this appears to be selective, or could be selective. That's not the witness, that's Doug Blades.
Legal argument.
Mr. DeFelice, how is me making that option now without knowing what these are? Mr. Blasey, I think, interrupted him. What he's presented in our exhibit, I said, what did he do? Mr. Blasey again, not the witness. And listen to this. All the monthly data showing time on the market, the sales price was constant month to month. And if that's the 140 properties, what 140 properties? He was looking at the whole group. And if you extract some of them out of there, they'll be low. Some will be high, and some will be in the middle. So he was, I believe, and let him tell me I'm all wet. But all he had to do was go back in and look at the data to see if this is a selective choosing. Gentlemen, this man said that he gave you 3 examples from within the 2-mile range. All 3 of his exhibits were about sales that were listed before this hearing was even advertised. He hid all this other information from you. He had the same information that I had. And all of mine were from in the time period after the hearing was scheduled and within 2 miles.
And we never agreed that that was relevant. And you're just doing legal argument for...
I'm making my motion. This man has made it up as he goes along. I want to refresh you on another piece of his testimony. You remember the testimony where he said, I'm using the detailed analysis, or where he was going to compare 2 different properties, and he said that's the methodology that he was using. And the example was that if you have 2 houses that are similar, except for one aspect. You can use this as detailed analysis of these two, and you can isolate why there's a difference in price. One has a swimming pool, one has not. And he said, to use that, you gotta analyze two properties. I asked him on cross-examination, how are you applying that in this case? And what I pointed out was, he wasn't using that analysis to compare two houses. He had concocted this theory of there's a relationship between the listing price and the sales price, and he took the listing price and the sale price for everything in two counties, and he created a percentage. And then he tried to do the same thing, first using one property, then using three properties. He never used that analysis. He has not proven that this analysis that he's trying to sell you is a recognized analysis. And then when you go over and you actually let him do it, you get this nonsense. He hid the bacon on you. And an expert witness is for one purpose and one purpose alone. And that's to educate the board, the trier of fact, in something that they're not familiar with. And number one, he's got to be credible. This man fails the test. I ask that Mr. Blasey has had 2 nights to get his testimony done, and he should not get any more. This is just a filibuster to our detriment. So I ask that he not be required, not be permitted to come back and now explain again.
Doug, go ahead. I'm going to let Doug respond, and then Adrian. I'm sorry.
I mean, frankly, this is an outrageous accusation, and it's bordering on the direct denial of due process to the parties I represent. Mr. Kaplan has tried this technique for every evening of interrupting witnesses, trying to distract them and discredit them. We would love to tell you what a more detailed explanation and review of these documents found, because they found they were fraudulent in many ways and intended to deceive this board into believing it had accurate information when it was giving manipulated and distorted information to the board. But it's very hard to answer all the questions at once when people come at you. I think what my witness was trying to say is he had a preliminary reaction to seeing something that looked different than the group of properties he looked at in his update. Because we asked him to do an update from his original report to see if there was any suggestion of change in the database. That's the 106 or 140. Let him tell you what the number was. And he said, looking at 12 is not the whole group. Why were they cherry-picked? And he picked one out and showed that the data was false from that A28. And then when he went home, after the hearing and looked at more, we find 5 of the 12 have altered and falsified data in them. We'd love to tell you about it.
So just so I'm clear, and everybody's still under oath, you're going to tell me that you're going to make accusations that he
That's
committed
correct.
fraud? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
Somebody did.
That's where we're
Now,
going.
I also said there was no foundation. We don't know who created them. So if he doesn't want to tell us who created them, it's an anonymous fraudster, and we'll testify about it.
They're MLS listings, they're public data, he had access to them. I don't really care necessarily who did what, okay? He had access to them. He had access to them, to those
No,
sales.
he didn't
How did
have
he have
access-
access to the sales? He's a real estate agent, he's a broker. He testified that he reviewed all of these properties, and he even said, I saw those properties, those were batched in. How can you tell me he didn't review them? He said it.
He didn't review those shorter versions in A28.
Okay, I understand.
So he
You're
believed-
gonna tell me that he cropped it out and that's relevant. I understand that, Doug. I get that. What I'm saying is those sales prices and the list prices were either what they are or what they weren't. right? So my point is that he testified that he did review them, and for whatever reason, didn't include them in his report.
Wait, he said he didn't do it because it justified what
No,
I said.
I said he said he reviewed. No, he's not going to testify again. He testified to this. He said he
Do
reviewed
you
them.
think anyone can follow this back and forth and understand at any
Are
given
you
moment
listen,
what is
Doug,
actually being
Doug.
asked of them?
Doug, my questions in the transcript were pretty straightforward.
And he tried to give you an answer that it seemed that unusual database, and he saw an irregularity on his first glance, and he would have to study it.
My question is did he see those? Not whether or not they were accurate or whatever. Did he see those property sales? His testimony was yes. When his
I'm
testimony
assuming
to
he
you
may
was
have
he
thought
didn't.
you were
Or to
asking-
Mark was.
Chad, you may have
All
been
right.
asking.
Adrian, go ahead.
Had you
Mark,
seen
hey, listen,
828?
Doug.
Yes, he had seen it.
He's going to get an opportunity to testify whether I agree that it should come in or not. He's going to get an opportunity to testify about this because I'm going to let the record be open. And if there was something wrong, it's not going to be because I didn't let his testimony in, whatever it is, about something that he should have included as a report initially. Because my entire understanding of his report was he reviewed properties and compared properties that fell within this 2-mile radius, compared those to the market in the Lehigh Valley and noted the differences there to note that the reason that these were lower was because of this project. That was his entire testimony. That was his entire report, was that these properties within this 2-mile radius would be adversely affected by this project. Okay. Go ahead, Adrian. Go ahead. No, Adrian, go ahead. We're going to just go. Let's go.
Focus on the motion that's in front of us.
I'm going to deny the motion. So if that works, go ahead. Let's go.
I just want,
It's noted for the record.
Doug did not say this. Chad said, why did you determine that these are outliers? Page 784, line 5. Because interestingly, they all come in at exactly what Mr. Kaplan was looking for, okay? If that's not an admission that he manipulated the data, I don't know what it is.
And that point is noted. The motion is still denied. But I do want to note, nothing that he's about to testify tonight was included in a written report from him as an expert. Nothing. Because there's been no supplement since the last time. So whatever he's going to testify tonight has not been included in a written report. I want that noted, and I want to note that the rules do require experts to include everything in their written report. That was not included. Okay, all right, that's fine. I want to note that.
He was presented by the applicant with 3 exhibits. He'd never seen them before. He had no opportunity
Doug,
to
I
present
completely
them in the
disagree.
written
The transcript is clear that he knew about the sales of these properties.
And
Whether
he'll
or not
tell
he
you
saw
about-
those documents that Mark included, he knew about those properties. He said it in direct response to my question.
Chad.
If you want to deny that he
respectfully,
said it, then that's your
I
prerogative.
suspect what you will hear is that they were in his large
Wait a
group
minute,
that
why
he
is he
assessed.
testifying?
Because you
Let's
were.
go,
in
let's
the-
go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Well, do you wish to have the
I
other
want him to
interveners
continue, and I want to note, Mr. Sterling, you are still under oath. Please continue. Ask your first question, Doug.
Before I do, this is a point of order, because I thought we ended, you were asking.
We're
other-
starting with you. Now you're bringing in new information with Mr. Sterling. You want to go over this stuff?
Okay.
That's the only logical way to go about it,
Okay.
because otherwise I think we'd be all over the place and there'd be no organization whatsoever to this transcript. So please start.
All right.
Can we get going?
Mark, come on. Come on. It's not helping.
This is just the delay.
It's not
going
helping.
on.
It's not helping.
Let me look at the transcript. I believe we would be up to Exhibit 22.
22 for you, 30 is where we left off for the applicant. So your 22 is the next one. Mark, yours next one would be 31 if you have anything else.
while he's doing that, can we mark this?
Yeah, you wanna make that 31?
Make that 31.
The transcript?
Yeah,
Okay.
excerpt from the transcript.
Did you get, let me just mark
Adrian?
that.
Yeah. That'll be A31 is the transcript pages from the July 11th meeting. It's pages 782 through 787.
Sorry.
Number is this one? What number?
I don't know, what is that?
I-22.
That'll be 22, I-22.
Okay. Mr. Sturley, would you look at I-22? And would you first tell us what the covering page is and what the
I
three...
don't have what,
Tell us what it is, and then we'll go into detail.
The entire packet is 22?
Yes.
How are we identifying this?
This would be a review of A28 that was offered by the applicant, and collateral documents probably.
Just for the record, these are the same 12 that were discussed at the previous meeting that were supplied. We didn't have copies.
Well, that's what I'm trying to clarify.
These are.
So what properties are they? Never mind.
The ones that were referenced, that should clear up.
Let
All right.
Mr. Sturley first tell us what comprises I-22, what are the various elements that you have produced here, and then we'll go into them in detail.
At the end of my last testimony, I was given 3 items from Mr. Kaplan. A map, a list of 12 properties that, I'm sorry, that he had extracted from the MLS. The MLS system can only be gotten into if you are a member of the Greater Lehigh Valley Association of Realtors. You are required to submit an application, a dollar amount to be investigated, and on a regular basis, you have to pay dues.
objection,
So,
this is irrelevant.
I can't even hear him, so I don't even know what was said.
Just tell them what you gotta be to be a member of the MLS.
Yeah,
This goes
sustained.
to the foundation, and we're gonna produce that. There is no evidence of who created those A28.
Doug, who created A28? If he printed them off and cropped them, and you're gonna tell me that the original sales price was different than that, then just say that.
We were
We don't
going
have
to.
to get into who actually did that. Let's just move on. If they were wrong, just tell us that they were wrong.
Okay.
Okay.
Let him first tell you what's in his package, then we'll go over each of the ones that are wrong.
Okay. And then I want to know at the end of that is why they weren't included in his original report. That's all I want to know.
in the packet, you're gonna see 12 sales. Those are the 12 properties that were produced by the applicant in abbreviated version. I had the opportunity to investigate each one of them. And then I also looked at properties that he or they omitted that were right next to the drip field. I searched the Upper Mount Bethel Township. I looked at the data that he provided. Of those 12 sales, they dated back to October of 2021. Okay, if you look at the sales. And then what I did was I formulated a report showing exactly where I feel as though that information is inaccurate, and that what was presented to me that evening threw up a lot of red flags and did not give you the full picture of each of those transactions.
Would you just explain what the three marked exhibits to I-22 are, and then go into the errors you found.
Okay. In exhibit, I'm sorry. In exhibit number 1, you're going to find a full and complete copy of the transaction of each of the 12 sales that were provided by the applicant. If you go back to exhibit,
Well, you're talking about starting with MLS listing for 1987 South Delaware Drive, right?
yes, sir.
Okay, let's go through and at least identify the properties,
Okay.
identify what these are, because if we say we're gonna go just back and forth, we're gonna go to the end, and then, I don't know if anybody's gonna understand what that means.
I'd like him just to finish identifying what each exhibit is, and then he's going to go through the text and tell you what errors he found in it or why it's relevant. It's just a background.
When you say exhibit you're giving me an
His
exhibit of an exhibit?
exhibit marked
So-
number 2 in I-22. He added 3 attachments to I-22. So what is that list of properties?
The 12 properties in Exhibit 1 are the full and complete history of that particular transaction that was provided to me by the applicant.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. It's false, why?
I mean,
He didn't get there yet, he's
Oh,
just
I
telling us,
thought he
still
did.
telling
I'm
us what they
sorry.
are.
what is Exhibit 2?
Exhibit 2, what I did was I looked at the first transaction that the applicant provided.
Wait a
and
minute. I got 1287 and 1287.
No, keep going. It's handwritten number 2, there's a page in between it.
Okay.
Where is 2?
Keep going.
And Exhibit 2,
Hang on, we'll
sorry.
get there.
I don't see it.
Keep going. It starts with it's essentially it's not a spreadsheet, but. Keep going.
in Exhibit 2,
Wait a minute, I gotta get there. So, what is Exhibit 1?
Can, I mean, having an exhibit of an exhibit is a little.
What he,
Can
No,
we,
let
can
him
we do
go
this?
answer.
ahead, just repeat what you said Exhibit 1.
Let him objection.
Hang
Let
on,
him
hang on.
answer.
You asked, Mark, I'm asking him to answer your question, so be
Hang on.
quiet.
I don't think it requires, I want to get these exhibits marked correctly for her, because this is going to be a disaster. Can we do this? Can we mark I-22 as this 2-page, I guess this is a supplemental report, is that first?
Yes.
Okay, you want to call it
Well,
that?
it was just going to be an outline of his testimony, but we're
Well,
willing to show it to
I
you.
object to that document. I certainly object to its admission.
That's fine, I just want to mark it first. Let's mark this packet of MLS listings for the 12 properties. Let's mark that as I-23.
Okay,
Can we agree to that? Okay. And then this packet that is marked, it's a bunch of, I don't know, 5 pages.
yeah.
Yeah, 5 pages, it's almost like a spreadsheet. Let's mark that as I-24. And then this Exhibit 3 we'll mark as I-25, which is still a mystery, I guess. Which is just a 2-page MLS listing for 904 Potomac Street. I'm sorry, 2 MLS listings, one for 904 Potomac Street and one for 1608 Potomac Street. Right? That's I-25. Okay.
Right. Mr. Sterling, would you, oh,
1 second. I-22 is the 2-page sheet.
Correct.
I-23
is the
A28.
larger packet of MLS listings for 12 pages.
And then what he calls Exhibit 2?
Is I-24,
Okay, thank you.
and then I-25 is the last, Exhibit 3. All right, so I think we were at, what, you were explaining what I-24 was?
Is that Exhibit 2, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Okay. The 12 sales that were presented to me went back to November of 2021 by the applicant. So I did a search of all the properties that have sold only in Upper Mount Bethel Township between November of 2021 to the current. And there were 203 transactions that took place in Upper Mount Bethel during the time frame of what the applicant showed me that evening. The final exhibit I have is Exhibit 3. I'm not quite sure how it was labeled. These are two properties that were omitted by the applicant in the 12 sales that they provided, one of which abutted the proposed strip field, and the other right down the street.
Okay.
So now let's go back to the substance and tell us what you found to be an error when you compared the data sets
Okay.
given in A28 to what you found in I23.
Okay. The first property, actually, the overall, I found 5 of the 12 limited data that was supplied had incorrect information, which would lead the reader of that data to be misled. The first property, which is 1987 South Delaware Drive, was on the market for 287 days, not 2 days. Now, I ask you, if you look at 1987 South Delaware,
I object. Where's the basis for that?
He's about to give it to you and you're
Well, he's-
objecting. But
He's
he
got
was-
to show us where
He
that
is
comes
about to
from.
do that. He asked you to turn to, and you interrupted him. So let him turn to it and ask the board to turn to it, and he'll show you.
okay, in Exhibit 1,
Which is identified or marked as I-23.
the first sheet that you see is a full explanation of the subject property when offered for sale, as well as all of the information and parties to the transaction when it was sold. Now, if you look at 1987 South Delaware, they identified it as MLS 732141. And if you go right before where you see all the numbers, LP, OLP, SP, and SD, right to the left, you're going to see days on the market, 2. However, what they failed to tell you or show in their data was that based on MLS data 70880, it was actually on the sale for 265 days by the same realtor. It was expired and then relisted. Realtors will do this because if they just relist it and don't let it expire, those days continue to accumulate. So the actual date or number of days on market was 267 days. So if you look at the second listing
Where you see,
of the same property,
mine says 285. Where are you getting 267?
Wait, where is
oh, I'm sorry, 285.
Wait,
It was on,
where is that?
The second, there are two listings. I assume for each property, there are 2 listings. Or for whatever ones that you're trying to
In
say.
this particular-
Fabricated or whatever, right?
In this particular
There's two listings.
example that
So
was
the next
given.
listing, you see it says 285, there's a different MLS number there.
Right.
Right, that's because Teal relisted it. Okay, just to note, just so we can move on, I don't know if there's anything else, but just to note, the list price and the sale price were the same, right? There's no disagreement about that, right?
That is correct.
All right. Can we
Okay.
move on from that property?
Ready? So instead of 2 days, it was 287 days on the market.
Total, okay?
The second sale that I found with incorrect information,
Let's identify the property.
Was 80
649 South Delaware Drive, right?
no, my next property that I found inconsistencies in
I'm going in order with what you presented. I assume that that's the way we were going. Yeah, what's the address? Just give us
It's
the address.
81 Summerfield.
What is it?
81 Summerfield area.
The second one here is 470.
I know.
What I'm attempting to hear
Wait a
is
minute.
there were
I
a
gotta
total
find- I
of
gotta
12
Time
properties.
out. I gotta find it. Way back.
How far towards the back?
It's the 8th property in their list, identified as
Wait a
80.
minute. Okay, I finally got it.
Yeah. Just a point of clarification or order, the properties in I-24 were in the exact same order that they appeared in A-28. But when he found an error, they weren't, every one wasn't in error, he jumped ahead.
Okay. I assumed that when you provided the exhibit, we were gonna go in the order of the exhibit. I was wrong. Let's go. 81 Summerfield Drive.
81 Summerfield. In their presentation, or the data given to the board and to myself, they showed a list price of $525,000 and a sale price of $500,000. However, the actual list price, if you look at the upper right on that sheet where it says LP, OLP, okay? OLP refers to the original listed price.
Wait a minute, I'm gonna object. Mr. Chairman, do you remember I put that out and I showed it and you turned around and said the 549 was the original listing price? It's in the transcript. We didn't do anything wrong with this, and to say that we did something wrong is just...
So do you not disagree that the original list price was 549? Okay.
Yeah, they didn't.
They did not list it. They listed it as the list price was $525.
Okay, all right. I don't know how Russ would have, I don't know how Mr. Owen would have known.
This is important, because when he was questioning this, so look at
Why do we
A28.
have this speech now? Let Stroley testify.
Okay, the reason the importance here is when they show a list price of $5.25 and a sale price of $500,000, the difference is $25,000. When you take the sale price or the $25,000 into that, you get a 4% decrease in value, which is false. You take 49, it went 40, was it 49,900 off of the list price. When you do those calculations, the true and accurate data is 9%, not 4% as represented by the applicant.
Okay, and was this one that you included in your original report?
I included in my report, yes.
All right, so we've been through this one. I think you included this in your original report as
Well,
one
I'm
of the ones that.
referencing what
Okay.
I found.
But now you're claiming that he misrepresented something that you initially reported on. I don't know why. What?
If I can speak, he represented the list price at $5.25. The applicant did.
But Mr. Sterling, you had already testified about it.
No,
So,
I am pointing out, he gave to the board a list price of $5.25.
all right.
You do the math, it's 4%.
Before you go on, Chad, frankly, you're confusing me. He was presented with A28 on cross-examination, this document of I think it was 6 pages. And property number 8 was the 81 Summerfield Drive. And it shows list price of $525, sale price of $500. And because when he was first given it, and he did recognize the property, he said there's something that seems off.
All right.
So there was a discussion.
Doug, was 81 Summerfield Drive not one of the properties, one of the 3 properties that he included in
Yes,
his
I
original?
think it
So
was.
then what are we talking about?
Because it was offered by the applicant as an exhibit. with
Okay, but we had
false
already
information.
established what the original list price was with Mr. Sterling.
But you're accepting without
Nobody's
foundation.
accepting anything. Nobody's accepting anything. Your witness testified to something different. If Mr. Kaplan or showed something else that wasn't entirely accurate, fine. But I don't know why, your witness had already testified that that was the original list price, and that there was a difference of 9% on that
But what
property.
was being offered to the board as an error in his assessment.
Okay.
Because they said it wasn't
All
a
right.
9% decline.
I think
it was a
Mr. Kaplan,
4%
I think Mr.
decline.
Kaplan has acknowledged that it was 549, right?
So let's do
It
the
is what
next
it is
one.
you're not arguing with the MLS listing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Can we move on?
and
What's the next one?
I think that our chart showed it that because, let's just go over.
All right, my next,
We're succumbing to the filibuster again.
the next property of the 12, I would ask you to please look at 88 Lenape Trail.
Which one?
88 Lenape Trail.
Third one.
Third one in. This property was
Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
This property was in excess of 2 miles away, but more importantly, it did not have on-site water or on-site sewage. Okay, it has a public community well and a public sewage system. I would ask you, if you have 88 Lenape Trail, if you could please drop down to the third line up. 1, 2, 3, it starts out hot water. It says electric. Starts out hot water, then cool on the far left. Perk test and water. It says community. If you go to the right, where it says sewer, it says community. Okay? This property,
Your testimony is that's not a well or a septic.
no, it is
Septic.
recognized as a PUC number. So it's a public,
But is it a well-based water, or, I'm asking, do you know or you not know?
I couldn't say 100% sure, it's probably a very large, well, they may have some type of septic or sewage system.
So if it was a community well, you're saying that wouldn't be included, that you're saying that there's a
It
difference
would not be
there?
included,
Okay.
no.
All right.
No, not from evaluation
All right.
point. Plus, it was in excess of 2 miles. My next property, I would ask you to refer to as 649 South Delaware, which is
I'm sorry, say that
The
again.
top one.
64 South, 649.
South Delaware.
Got it.
That's on the second one in, okay? In what was provided to me by the applicant, they showed a sale price of $272,000. However, what they failed to tell you is that the seller had to contribute $12,000 in order for the purchaser to acquire this home. Seller concessions are viewed as being atypical. In other words, it's not a normal expense paid by the seller, which is typically a realtor's commission and a 1% transfer tax. So if you could please look on that page, and if you look to the very bottom block there, where it says financing, it was through the VA, Sold date was April 5th of 2024. Seller concessions, yes, and the amount was $12,000. That was withheld. The property did not sell for what was presented to you that evening. Okay. If you take a total of these, that's 43% of the sales that were offered to this board was incorrect. Misleading information. They cherry
Wait,
picked.
wait a minute. How many has he gone through?
4, 5,
5.
5 of the 12,
Okay.
right? And just to be clear, none of these were included in your report, right?
The
Except for 81 Summerfield.
81 Summerfield.
Okay.
And there are reasons why. And I'm more or less going over the reasons why.
So you're telling me that the reason you didn't include 649 South Delaware Drive was because it had a $12,000 seller concession?
That is correct.
You're-
It was atypical.
But it did sell for the
Financing.
list price though, right?
It
Even
did
with the-
sell.
So,
Well, it didn't, no. And this comes from where you have to look at it from an appraisal standpoint. Okay? We deduct the 12,000 off of the actual selling price.
right, and the original list price per this MLS listing that you provided.
So the actual list price was $259.9.
And sold.
The actual
for-
sale price of $260. Okay? However, if you also look at the date of closing, which was April of 2024.
As this hearing is pending.
That's
You're-
well, yes, we're into 2024.
Well, how wouldn't it be relevant then?
My report was done April of 2023,
But you,
as well as an update in November of 2020.
you testified in July of 2024.
Again,
You provided an update in June of 2024.
okay.
I'm just saying, Doug, is this within the 2-mile radius?
He gave you all the properties he looked at, the 14, we'll get back to that, that's exhibit, I think, A20. He didn't necessarily do an update on all the property sales. He was looking at wording and conclusions to see if there was anything to change.
No, you're right, Irv.
The,
You know, it's
All
one
right,
thing-
all right. I don't even know where we're at. Is there any more,
Yes.
are there more that you're saying should not have been included and why?
that is correct.
All right, let's go through
I
this.
would ask you to look at 910 Potomac Street.
9, 10, 20.
Potomac, I'm sorry. That property,
Hold on. 9, 10, Potomac.
Just, let's start with this basic stuff. You're not disagreeing that this 910 Potomac Street is within the 2-mile radius, right?
that's correct.
All right.
It's next door.
The property at 910 Potomac Street, through my investigation, the seller did not want to disclose to a purchaser about the drip field.
Objection.
The,
Objection.
As- I-
That is total hearsay.
No, it's not. This is how an appraiser works. What do you think? When he looks at the
No.
listing.
Do you have a copy of the seller's disclosure?
I do not know,
Okay.
okay? I could
Sustained.
print it on my
What-
phone.
What's sustained? How is this not hearsay?
Through my investigation, I interviewed multiple people to the transaction.
That's still
Let him
hearsay.
testify and then don't consider it, but let him tell you what he did.
It's hearsay.
All right, if you would
This is-
please look to the bottom of 910 Potomac Street, where it says SA. Okay, SA stands for selling agent. You'll see non-member. That means that the person who sold this property represented the purchaser and was not from the general area of the market.
Objection as to relevance. I asked it to be stricken. That's irrelevant.
Go ahead, keep going.
Okay? For these reasons, it was not a true and accurate transaction. Through my investigation, normal course of investigation, the sellers withheld.
Objection. This is going to be hearsay. You can't get it through to him, Chad. He can't
No,
sit here and say, my
if you
investigation, and then tell something, and we can't cross-examine.
Doug, and you have to understand where I'm coming from, and I don't think I'm being unreasonable when I say this. You just filed a lengthy motion trying to exclude the MLS listings that he provided without proper foundation. And now you want me to allow him to testify about things that he apparently talked to someone about.
Exactly, it's exactly how an appraiser works. Now, if you want to turn every one of these
And
into
you're
a
saying-
multi-million-dollar hearing, multiple days to bring in witnesses from afar to say, I was an agent from the suburbs of Lebanon, you can do it, but as a certified appraiser, it's not hearsay to do your job as you've been trained to do and make judgments about how you're trained to do it.
That's fine.
Absolutely.
Mr. Sturley, do you have any knowledge of the original list price of $499 on this property being inaccurate on this MLS listing?
If that's what's stated, no.
Okay, and through your investigation, whatever,
What was your answer?
Okay, he's referencing 910 Potomac Street.
Just tell me what you said.
The list price was $499.9, yes.
all right, and you just explained to me that you did a lengthy investigation into this sale. So when I asked you and you tell me that you're relying on the MLS listing, I'm asking you, based on your investigation, do you have any disagreement that the original list price was $499 for this property?
No,
Okay. Do you have any disagreement that the sale price for this property was $520,000?
no,
And do you have any disagreement that this is within the 2-mile radius?
yes.
And do you have any you have disagreement that it is?
Hold on, I'm sorry. What was
Is it within the 2-mile
Yes.
radius? Okay. And you would agree with me that the sale price, the sale date was April 5th of 2023, right? Or I'm sorry, May 5th of 2023.
That's correct,
And that would have been after the advertisement for the first hearing in this matter, right?
correct.
Okay, and you did not include this in your original report or your supplemental report from June of 2024, right?
No, and there's
Okay.
reasons why,
Okay. Next property.
okay? What an appraiser has to do is make sure,
For the witness.
Next property, please.
right,
Doug, ask
of
the
the
question.
12 sales, or actually of all the sales that I considered, first and foremost, you must have a ready, willing, and able buyer and a ready, willing, and able seller, fully informed,
Okay.
fully
Please ask
informed.
it, please, Doug.
He's
Ask the
telling
question.
you why he would have rejected that one when he investigated it. Now we'll go to the next set of errors.
Okay.
You can reject, it's this board's decision, but I want the record to be clear why he does it. So would you now tell us whether you think something was left out? That was
Yes,
important.
if you would
Should-
please-
Which property are we talking
Well,
about?
we're going to talk about,
Can we just identify the property?
I would ask you to please refer to Exhibit 3.
which would be as marked I-25.
You're talking about 904 Potomac Street and 1608 Potomac Street.
Yes, sir.
And were these two included in your original report?
Yes,
These were the two, including Summerfield. Third was the Summerfield.
yes.
Okay.
Okay. 904 Potomac Street, based on my investigation, it was a true arm's length transaction, both buyers and sellers being knowledgeable of the market. Okay? This was not put in theirs. And you,
Hearsay.
Oh, no. I mean, I guess my question is did he not testify about all this already?
no, I'm testifying to why this was not included and should have been in the 12 sales.
But didn't you include this in your report?
To me, it's a separate issue, but you two can argue about it.
Answer it.
To me, it goes to, we had 204 sales in Upper Mount Bethel Township. The applicant picked 12.
And you picked 3.
No, I picked 4 total. Plus, the closer they are to the property, the ones that were showing a 9% loss in value actually abutted or within a few hundred yards of the drip field.
Okay.
9%.
And so just so I'm clear, because I don't recall your report including any sales that occurred in 23 or 24. And these 2 listings, the one for 904 Potomac Street indicates a sale date of 2/17 of 23. 1608 Potomac Street indicates a sale date of April 29th, 2024, right?
April of 2024 for 1608,
Right.
okay?
So these 2 were not 2 of the 4 that you included in.
The 904 Potomac, I believe, was.
The other two were on Homestead.
All right. And you're saying that he didn't include these in the 12 that he presented to you?
My question would be, yes, they weren't there.
No question. That's what you're saying.
These were not included and
Okay.
should have been.
I'm sorry, what?
They were not included, but in my professional opinion, they should have been.
All right, and you're saying that because, and your point being is that they show, at least 904 Potomac Street shows an original list price of $499, sale price, at least according to this, of $429, 1608 Potomac.
Wait, 520. You're talking 910 Potomac.
No, 904 Potomac.
Oh,
It's the last 2 on Exhibit 3. The I-25, yeah, there you go. Follow me? Okay. The sales are the sales. Yeah. Right? I mean, that's what you're saying, right? It shows original or sale prices lower than the original list price.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, I got it. Okay.
The final sale at 1608 Potomac, okay, occurred actually April 29th of 2024.
Okay.
List price of $450, it sold for $409. Again, within a very close area of the property, or the drip field, I'm sorry. And if you would refer to Exhibit 2,
Which would be I-24.
there are 5 pages in this exhibit. The applicant went back to November of 2021 to search for comparables to end up with the 12. There was a total of 203 transactions in the entire township of Upper Mount Bethel during that period. My question would be, why these 12?
You can't ask a question. He's a witness on the stand.
Then he's testifying.
He said, I have a question. That's pretty clear English.
Answer your own question then, Mr. Sterling. Why do you
The
think-
question that came to mind was why 12 when there was 204 or 203
I can't
transactions?
believe that. He showed you 3 or 4, and he's questioning why we picked 12?
Wasn't,
This
okay.
is just irrelevant.
Not just irrelevant, it's perfectly relevant. It's exactly what an appraiser does, and they would have created a foundation and
How
presented a
testify?
witness who generated the document, and we would have cross-examined them and had them thrown out.
Doug, the foundation argument,
There's no foundation.
He's testifying about things that he talked to about some realtor. I don't care if you think that that is the way appraisers work. That's not the way the rules of evidence work. He can't sit there and testify. How is he supposed to give the opportunity to cross-examine? If he brings in an expert that says, well, I talked to so-and-so and they said that it increased, and the reason that they're buying this is because it's next to the drip irrigation field, and I want public sewer. If he comes in testimony or brings in an expert that sits here and testifies about him talking to various people involved in transactions that say that they're excited and they want to live next to it, you would object all over to that. You would object to that in a heartbeat, and I would agree with you. So how is this different on the other side? So, like, I understand what you're saying, and I want to move this along because I think it's a credibility issue, but how are you going to make an argument about foundation when he's literally testifying about conversations he had with unknown people?
That's how.
Excuse me, can I?
No, you cannot. No, you cannot.
No, I want a minute to talk to my attorney.
You talk to your attorney. That is a good idea. Let's take a 5-minute break. I got to use the restroom.
Thank you.
update when you look at 14 for your base. Remember? That's,
All right, we're back on the record here. I think we're almost wrapped up, at least with the direct of, or the second or third direct that we've had of Mr. Sterling. But I did have one other question that I had addressed. Mr. Sterling, in what is I-23, which was Exhibit I-1, there were several other MLS listings in here that you didn't address specifically tonight, and I'm just going to identify them. And my question is that you don't have any disagreement with any of those, that those were accurate?
Based on my further data.
Correct.
They seem
Okay.
accurate.
Based on your re-review, I guess?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
And I just want to identify them. They're MLS listings for 479 Evergreen Road, 395 Sunrise Boulevard, 120 Pine Tree Lane, 142 Crystal Terrace, 1195 Sunrise Boulevard, 632 Orchard Road, and 46 Highland Court.
Which exhibit?
That was Exhibit 1. It's I-23.
Oh, okay, it's exhibit 1,
Yeah.
and those are,
Those are ones he is not,
he hadn't testified.
he doesn't have, after his review, he has no disagreement about, he doesn't contest anything about those properties and those sales, right?
No.
Okay, okay.
So is that the 7 sales that were accurate of the 12?
Well, after further investigation.
Can you answer the question yes or no?
After further investigation, I found it.
They were accurate.
There wasn't anything that I could find that would say they misrepresented the list price, misrepresented
Okay.
the days
Yes.
on market.
Okay.
As
Can I get an
examples.
answer to my question?
I think the answer is yes. Mr. Sterling, the answer is yes, that after your investigation, that you didn't find anything inaccurate or anything about those. Okay.
Thank you.
And then Doug, I think you
Yes.
just wanted to clarify. I thought I-20 was admitted, but if not, we could admit it now. Just identify I-20 as that packet of,
Mr. Sterling, would you, I'll show you I-16 initially, which is your report of April 25th, 2023, and if you would go to page 6 in the conclusion, do you reference reviewing 14 properties? And if so, tell us what you did, and we'll see if we can identify it.
I identified the market, which reflected the actual sale price of homes within the affected area. I was able to locate 14 of those sales.
14 what sales?
14 sales that were not directly affected by the proposed drip field.
meaning not in the 2-mile radius?
Not affected by. You have to understand, everybody's getting confused with this 2-mile radius.
I thought that's what you said the impact area was.
No, everybody's using this 1 to 2 mile radius, and they're thinking that every home within that 2-mile radius will lose value. I am not saying that will lose value, and that's not the case. Okay? There are properties outside or within. All right? What the appraiser has to do is isolate the ones that the only thing you can say why this home lost value is because of the proposed drip field and the attention by the media. And that is what was in my report.
Did you not identify the 2-mile radius as the impacted area?
I believe what I meant to say is we,
Let him explain.
Yeah, I'm asking, yeah.
in other words, we looked at a 2-mile radius, okay? That could take a little bit north.
I'm going to object. Can you get an answer to your question as to whether or not he identified the
Mark, I know you're passionate about this, but it really, I don't think is helping. I do want to get through this the best I can. But Mr. Shirley, my understanding, and we can go back to the transcript, but my understanding is that you identified this 2-mile radius as the area that you believe would be impacted by the drip irrigation, the project.
Well, the 1 to 2 mile radius was my beginning.
Okay,
And then through my investigation, I was able to narrow down the properties that I could say beyond a reasonable doubt was affected by 9% based on the current media attention and the proposed drip field.
And what properties are those?
Oh, no, we're not starting all over again. Please, I object.
yeah, I mean, they're in his report, right? I mean, the properties that. Are you suggesting that there are properties outside of the 2-mile radius that could be impacted by this?
No, I start, from an appraisal point, we start out here, and then we bring it in. And we bring it in based on our research and investigation and speaking to other people. That's what appraisers do.
All right.
And we were able to identify the ones that were beyond a reasonable doubt lost value because of the proposed drip field and the
These
media
properties
attention.
that were identified in I-20 that you had, are these within the 2-mile radius or not?
Yes,
And are those the properties referred to on page 6 of your April 25th?
yes,
Okay, thank you. I'd offer that then,
And you're suggesting that these properties would not have been impacted by the drip irrigation field?
based on my investigation, no.
What led you to determine, to reach the conclusion that these properties would not be affected by the drip irrigation field?
Well, can I say interviews with parties to the transaction?
Okay.
all right. I have no further questions.
I have no questions.
Adrian?
No, I don't have any.
Okay. That's that, Mr. Sterling, you're done.
Okay. I need just 2 minutes
Sure.
to clear the stuff and bring our next witness up.
Oh, yeah. While we're waiting, yeah. Hang on. Yes, I forgot that. And just to note, we're gonna do this now, because I knew this was gonna be an issue from the beginning, and now we're here, and we have 30 parties identified in the first, from the first meeting, and now we're down to about, I don't know, 5. So anyone that was identified or previously requested party status, please identify yourself now. Please stand and identify yourself. So, yeah, please just state your name, just to take an attendance.
Oh, can I ask my questions now?
Let's do the attendance first. You can ask your questions as soon as we do that.
Okay, my name is Joe Tripoli.
Joe Tripoli, yep, he's
Our
here.
address is 65 Sunrise Boulevard,
Okay, sir?
and our property starts at the corner of Sunrise and Potomac.
Okay, yep.
Fred Clark,
Fr-
19 Crystal Terrace.
Okay, he's here. Anyone else that requested Mr. Angle? He's here. Anyone else that requested party status? Just identify, I just want to note that you're here. Yeah, I said Mr. Angle. Yeah, I got Mr. Angle. So we have 3 of the 20 or so. Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Tripoli. Yep, you can ask. And we're asking Mr. Sterling the questions, right? Okay.
Yes. Mr. Surley, as an appraiser and a real estate man, my question is, we have a 122-acre preserved farm on the corner, it starts at the corner of Sunrise and Potomac. And as a preserved farm, well, let me back up. We have USAA insurance, which is military insurance. And as a high-value property, USAA sends an appraiser every year to evaluate our property before we get our USAA homeowners insurance bill. okay? So my question to Mr. Surley is, do I have to report to this appraiser whenever he shows up that there's a drip irrigation, 22-acre drip irrigation field, 500 feet from our property, that's gonna dump 111,000 gallons of treated sewage a day into the ground?
Objection, there's, the characterization.
I don't know
is
what
wrong.
I don't know what relevance it has, but
But
you can ask. Go ahead if
what
you want to
makes
answer.
him what makes him an expert? How does he know?
He's gonna say, go ahead, answer the question.
If I was performing the appraisal, that's the first thing not the first, but many of the first things we do. Okay, we look at what's going on in the market, and if we found that there is a drip irrigation field, I can speak to myself and myself only, okay, as to what another appraiser would do. However, I do sit on the state licensing board in the state, I believe, in PA, okay? I'm an instructor. I can give you names of appraisers, I will give you what you want. However, I'm an advocate of my number and my findings. If I was performing the appraisal, sir, I would look at it and I would say, yes, I would have to report it.
Okay.
Okay, so my question then is, based on that, would my homeowner's insurance go up or down? Okay, all right,
Jeff?
well, then,
Sustained.
okay.
Go ahead.
All right, my next question is, you guys have a drawing called SK 3000. It's a layout of
Is this
the
an
area.
is this an exhibit?
I guess it's in that binder of yours. I don't know. I don't have access.
You're the one asking questions, Mr. Tripoli.
All right, well, on that drawing, I saw that there's Ronnie Angle's property is drip irrigation field A. There's another drip irrigation field B on the River Point project. Now, my question again is, if I have to report A, I certainly have to report B.
My understanding is that there's one drip irrigation field proposed. That's what's presented.
Well, no,
before you.
if you look at SK 3000.
Listen. The proposal that was submitted to this board for consideration is for one drip irrigation field on the Angle property. That's it.
That's correct.
So if we want to talk about hypotheticals, we can talk about hypotheticals all night. And I don't want to do that.
Okay. Okay. Now,
Well, I will say that this is part of an exhibit, and I think the question is a legitimate one, and it can be answered by the witness.
What relevance does it have, Adrian? A drip irrigation field that's not being proposed, that shows up on a map.
I think it's relevant to the
Wait a minute, this is cross-examination of Mr. Foley. That exhibit was advanced by Fred Ebert when he testified.
Right, so it's your exhibit proposed, and it shows a second drip irrigation.
So you think a drip irrigation, hang on. I just want to understand the argument. That a drip irrigation field that is not being proposed to be built is relevant to this hearing for a drip irrigation field that is being proposed to
I
be
think
built.
it's relevant to the witness, to Mr. Tripoli's question.
Sustained.
Well-
Move on to your next question.
okay, my next question is, Ebert Engineering didn't do SK 3000. Dynamic Engineering did.
Okay.
And I wanted to get a copy of SK 3000.
What question do you have for Mr. Sterling? If
Okay.
you want a copy of SK 3000, you can request a copy of SK 3000. It just doesn't have to be done tonight while you're supposed to be asking
Well, I
questions of the
did
witness.
request a SK 3000.
Did you
I
submit a
called
right to know?
Dynamic
Did you
Engineering.
submit a right to know request to the township?
No, well, I called Dynamic Engineering and I offered to pay for a drawing, and the guy never called me back, Steve Walsh.
Right, it's
So,
copyrighted, it's
all right,
copyrighted
so now,
property.
how do I get a copy of SK?
You're not, you can show up at the township building and review it. They're not obligated to give you a copy of anything. It's the property of the engineer.
So,
It's not up to the
as
township.
an
It's not
affected
up to
party,
us.
I don't, I can't get a copy?
You can
even
go
if
in
I
and
paid
review
for
it, you can
Let's
go in and
stop
review it
this.
anytime, do
Mr.
you have any other
Wait a
questions?
minute. You send me an email, we'll get you a copy of that.
Okay.
Give me an email address that I can send it back to you.
So my last question is, well, according to this, both drip irrigation fields are on this paper.
Is there more than one drip irrigation?
We have not presented
There you
any
go.
evidence with regard to the other drip field that you're talking about.
Okay, so my last question is, so I don't get objected, if you go on the Upper Mount Bethel Township.
Is this a
website-
question for Mr. Sterling?
Well, I have questions about the Ebert engineering drawings. When do I get to ask those questions?
You should have asked him when he was
When Mr.
here.
Ebert was here.
Well, I didn't know about party status at that point.
You asked for it, we talked about this
Well,
beforehand. Mr. Dribbler.
yeah, you granted me, but. it
Yes,
was
and I
after
explained to
Mr.
you what
Ebert-
it meant. You were in the same position as every other party in this case. The same position as the township, the same position as the concerned citizens or whoever Mr. Blasey represents, Mr. Onufrak and Ms. Duffield, I'm sorry. You're in the same position as that. So you have the opportunity, just like they do when those witnesses are called, to ask those questions. We are now on Mr. Sterling. Do you have any questions about his
No, I don't have
report
any
on the real
questions
estate?
for Mr.
Okay,
Sterling.
then you're done. Okay. If you want to ask questions about the report, please talk to Mr. Kaplan before. It sounds like he's more than willing to give you copies of what you want to look at.
Is there any point in these meetings where it's open to general questions that I could ask?
So you
No.
want to ask questions as a party and as general?
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to do that. We're not going to allow we're not going to duplicate all of this stuff.
Okay, well, that's all the questions I had for Mr.
Okay.
Sterling.
Mr. Clark, any questions for Mr. Sterling? Okay.
This is part of the filibuster.
That's fine.
Hi, just one simple question. I hope it's simple.
Yeah, just Fred
Oh,
Clark.
Fred Clark, 19 Crystal Terrace. The point has been made about when this hearing was filed for, in other words, this appeal. And that date has been brought out as being relevant. Have you ever seen property value, when information that something like this strip field is going to be proposed, before it gets filed with the zoning hearing board, have you ever seen property prices move in advance of such official public notification?
I'm going to object because the report sets the time. His report talks about after the filing of the application.
You can answer it. He can answer it.
Through my initial investigation, this proposal actually came about August 19th of 2020 with multiple community meetings, et cetera. So this has been building up, and it's gotten to the point where it has created fear and a lot of health concerns. So I have seen another study where the chairman of St. Luke's Health Network.
Okay. This is all.
The answer is,
Okay.
the answer is yes.
I don't know what the answer is. The answer is what he
Yeah,
said.
I didn't hear yes or no.
Okay.
You won't.
Okay, all right.
Do you have another question?
That's it. That's
Okay,
all I
thank
wanted.
you.
That's all I got.
Mr. Angle, any questions for Mr. Sterling?
Always going to grant him mercy, but I guess I will. Mr. Sterling,
Is the mic on there?
I hope.
Your name and address?
Ron Angle, $52 million highway. That's the Springhouse farm. That's really the Angle farm. The other farm, I never farmed. But anyway, Mr. Sterling, I've been here for every one of these. And needless to say, I won't ask whether you were sworn in because you were. And having been around real estate a number of years, I had some questions about what generates perjury. But I'm not gonna get into that. What I'm gonna get into is you specifically said 120 Pine Tree Lane. I own 25 acres on Pine Tree Lane. I also own on Potomac Street. I directly adjoin the drip irrigation field on Potomac Street, and I'm very knowledgeable in real estate. I'm not a guy in theory, I'm a guy in reality, Mr. Sterling. So I look at things in reality, and not what a theory may be. That property was listed for $294 and sold for $353, correct?
Again,
120 Pine Tree Lane.
I don't have anything in front of me. I can't respond to that.
Okay, but you said you did do a study on real estate in general up in Mount Bethel. And I would have to say, I don't think there's too many people who are more knowledgeable about real estate in Upper Mount Bethel maybe than I. But in not theory, but in real world of buying, selling, and owning. So I would say to you, you listed a number of properties in theory that somehow you say were related to drip irrigation and they lost their value. I looked at every single one of those ones you said. They actually were, you were incorrect in what you were saying.
All right, let's,
Testifying here, Mr. Mayor?
he's gonna ask a question.
Ask a question.
Are you representing the township? by the way?
I am.
Yeah, you're representing.
All right, all
You're
right.
representing the township, that's very interesting, by the way. I like that. Two backups for this gentleman. So my question to you is, when you've done your study on the values of the 1 to 2 acres, did you find any properties that actually brought more within the 1 or 2 acres than what they were listed for?
1 to 2 miles, you mean?
2 miles.
You mean 1 to 2 miles, you said 1 to 2 acres.
Pardon me, miles, right. Within the 1 to 2 miles, did you find any properties that sold for more than they were listed for?
First and foremost, mine's
That's a
not,
yes or no question. Did you find any?
mine's not in theory. Mine
I'm
is
not interested in theory, I'm
fact.
interested in reality. I
What
wanna
you
answer-
have,
I'm asking reality
sir,
questions.
sir, if I could speak.
Let him answer,
Did
let
you
him
find
answer,
any?
let him answer.
Sir, you have what we call in my profession, you have chauffeur knowledge. I have appraisal knowledge. And if you'd like, I would be happy to explain it to you.
Then could you please?
Chauffeur knowledge, chauffeur.
What's that mean? Spell it.
All right, come on, come on.
Who cares? This is just.
The question was, did you find any properties in your study that sold for more than the list price within that 1 to 2 mile radius?
With a 1 to 2 mile radius, yes.
Okay.
Could you tell me how many? Generally, a dozen?
No, I can't.
Even after review of the properties that you re-review this time?
Am I answering his question?
I'm just trying to clarify. I mean, I'll wait until he's done and then ask you the same question if that's the way you want to do it. But I'm just trying to clarify so that we can move this along.
Well, again,
You're saying even after your last testimony, when you re-reviewed this, that was my question.
we start here and we work our way in. The closer we get to the property and the less the variables, that then tells us, less the variables between the properties, we were able to locate properties beyond a reasonable doubt in my professional experience, okay, that the 9%, and I believe there was 3
I'm
of
going
them.
to object to this and ask it to be stricken.
No, just
Non-responsive
let
to
him
Mr.
answer.
Engels.
Just let him answer. Just let him answer.
We concluded, and I would conclude that I'm an advocate of my number. I'm not an advocate of my client. So irregardless of who hired me here tonight, my number's the number, and it won't change, okay? And I can say that 9% loss in value to those homes that met the criteria through normal appraisal practice was caused by the media attention and the health concerns.
What evidence do you have of health risks? What evidence do you have of health risks? What are you talking about?
If you look at my update in November, I would have you refer to, and I'm going from memory here, exhibit
Just
3?
so I'm clear, you're not a doctor of any sort, right? A medical doctor of any sort, right?
No.
So how are you sitting here testifying about health effects that this project may or may not have on this property?
I believe
Are you qualified for that? Doug, I don't think you qualified him to testify about health effects? I mean, if we're
Yes, we
getting,
did.
how did you qualify him to testify about health effects that this would have on the property, or that would, this would have?
He said health concerns, you didn't say health
Yes.
effects.
How was he
And he had-
qualified to testify
He
about that?
listed,
I want to be precise.
Okay, health concerns, not health effects. How are you qualified to testify about health concerns? I'm not saying that they don't exist. I'm asking how he's qualified to testify about them.
Again, through my investigation, health concerns, contaminated wells, water overflow, and odor are health concerns. And this is what people are looking at. If you refer to my update, there in there, you will see a letter from St. Luke's
This
Hospital.
off, please.
Okay, I think the question is how many properties, just Mr. Engel, I think the question is how many properties sold for more than the list price within the 1 to 2 mile radius for your time period?
I'm unable to answer.
You don't know?
At
Okay.
this point, no.
Okay.
Would you say it was a few, quite a few, many? Can you give me a rough estimate?
Asked and answered, sir.
Next question.
You know what? It's senseless for me to ask you any more questions, Mr. Sterling, because it's pretty evident you were hired for a specific purpose, and it wasn't to take a look at all this.
Okay,
It was to
all right.
do what they wanted to prove.
All right, no other questions.
No need to ask you any further questions.
Any questions from the board members for Mr. Sterling? Yes, Leo, I'm sorry, McDonald.
Quick question. Very early, Mr. Ebert testified there were other drip irrigation projects in operation, some for several years. In other parts of the state, I think he mentioned Upper Euclid as one. Did you do any investigation as to whether the presence of that had a measurable impact on real estate values in those areas?
That was not part of my assignment, no, sir.
Okay. Would that have been a good way to determine in the real world what effect this may have?
No,
Or does have?
no.
Why not?
The reason being is it's market specific. Okay? And what I mean by that is, first of all, you isolate your market, which was Upper Mount Bethel. From that point, we look at where the proposed drip field is going to be located. And at that point in time, okay, we then start to research transactions within that. And then we start to pull out the ones that we can say beyond a reasonable doubt that the only thing that the list price to sale price was affected by was the media concerns and the health concerns.
Thank you.
Yep, Mr. Manzi.
Get this thing, if this is on or not, yeah, okay. Yes, sir, I have a couple questions. Maybe you can give me some guidance here. My question is in regards to the drip irrigation field they're talking about here and have been. Would you say that a drip irrigation field here in Mount Bethel could be different and affect homes different here than it would in another state?
I would have to say in general, yes. Every market's different. And as I said, each market you have to study. And after you make that study, for example, I did one in Lower Nazareth Township. I came up with 11.5% diminution in value, okay?
For a drip irrigation field?
No, but something similar to what's, changing, proposed zoning change or use.
Yeah,
What the application.
I don't know what happened, that's
what
why
the
I asked.
application
I don't know
is
what
asking.
happened in Lower Nazareth.
Okay. Up in Clark Summit, I had performed a study up there when the paper company had a spill. And in that case, it was about a 5 to 7 mile radius from that property. Several properties, their wells were contaminated. We were able to conclude there was a large loss in value. In addition to the ones that the wells were actually contaminated, we also were able to extract from the market that there was concern of other potential buyers moving into that area, even though it was.
Relevance. We're talking about some spill of some toxic substance that's not even close to what we're talking about here.
Doug?
So I object.
He's telling you what an appraiser,
I
he is
object.
telling you what the,
Please allow a response to my objection. I give you due deference, I expect the same.
my
No,
understanding.
no. What's the response to the objection on relevance? Why is our spills that are clearly not, or nothing, or all of these things that he's talking about that are not related to a drip irrigation field, why are they relevant to this hearing?
Well, frankly, I was distracted because I was looking for the document, and I was quite sure we presented at one point a list of 8 activities that he had been involved in with hazardous waste sites.
What relevance does that, if it's not a drip irrigation field, what relevance does it
Because
have?
what his expertise in is assessing how the public reacts to a set of facts, not whether it's actually gonna happen or not.
But it has to be the same set of facts. What if it was next to a nuclear fallout site? Wouldn't that be different than a drip irrigation field? I mean, like, this is what I'm saying, so what relevance does it have to an application for a drip irrigation field? So what relevance does something that happened in relation to some sort of toxic spill from a paper company, I think you said? What relevance does that have to an application for a drip irrigation field?
Maybe I misunderstood the question.
Yeah, my question was, again, would a drip irrigation field, under similar circumstances, I'm not talking about anything else, chemical companies and this, that, right here, with building that's gonna go on, say companies would come in there, and the same situation in another state, would it have the same, a similar effect on those properties?
In order for me to answer that, I would first have to do an analysis like I did here. Every market is different. It could be 8%, it could be 25%. Okay, that I don't know.
It could be a positive.
Highly unlikely.
I mean, public sewer, I mean, would that have a positive effect on property value if the property had public sewer?
Well, are
versus-
we talking, all right,
Gentlemen,
I'll answer your question.
please,
Going back into the
we
80s,
have-
Bethlehem
We
Township.
have 1 hour left, maybe a couple minutes more. There's one more witness. Can we please get to him? We're
Yeah.
playing right into
Yeah.
this.
It's my fault. Mr. Mintz, does that answer your question?
Yes, but I just want to make.
Sure.
I got a comment here. The reason I asked that question is that according to what's been shown to us so far, saying that it affects property values and on homes and whatever else in the area. Well, I can tell you, I happen to be in Florida, and this is the World Questioning Center.
We sat through 3 nights of testimony from him, and now we're gonna have comments because he's bringing up this thing from Florida again? Come on.
And there happened to be a sewer plant there, a drip irrigation field that's 3 times the size of this one. And within 300 yards of the drip irrigation field, and I got pictures, there are multi-million-dollar houses there.
I think, just to kind of clarify, I think his testimony is it would have to be specific to the market that you're looking at. And I think he hasn't looked at that market specifically in Florida. There may be other factors that are in play that would have affected that a different way.
When you're saying the market, you mean like the type of buildings?
No, I'm saying the type of buildings, the location, the geographical location, the utilities that it has. I think that's what he would have to look at to determine, I think, answer that question. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Anybody else from the board? No. Okay, I think we're done with Mr. Sterling.
Are you sure?
Yes, I think so.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, that's okay. All right, Doug, are you ready for Dr. Elliott?
Yep.
Okay.
Which one?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
What exhibit are we up to for us?
Say that again? Yeah, I-26 is next. We had 25.
No, I'm happy to do it.
And then there's a supplement, so maybe you would take the, so that'll be so this is what, the report is I-26? And then the supplement, which I distributed, is I-27.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I-26 is the report, and then a supplement is I-27.
Dr. Elliott, I'll just wait a moment. Is there a resume attached to your report identified as I-26? And if so, can you kind of direct the board to where it appears? It was here. Oh, or qualifications, where is that? Here, I'm sorry.
But I don't have the supplement.
Where's your resume? Did I not? I apologize, I've got a,
Doug, I'm gonna stipulate that this man is an expert.
Hey,
Okay,
there we go.
good.
I was just gonna ask.
thank you.
I was just gonna ask. Yeah, he objects.
What did Doug say? He
No,
objects?
Adrian did.
Here it is. I apologize, I have his resume here, so let's mark that as I-28. And I don't have multiple copies.
What's 27, the supplemental?
Yeah, so I will give this one to the board, and I'll get copies for everyone else. I
I
apologize.
think you already sent this out, didn't you?
I think
Yeah,
I
he did.
All right.
I had his resume.
Yeah, you're good. All right.
Dr. Elliott, do you understand that you're being called as an expert witness in this particular matter?
I do.
And can you tell the board in what area or subject matter you believe you have specialized knowledge, skill, experience, or training that would relate to this topic?
Land-based recycling and disposal of effluents and residuals from water and wastewater treatment systems.
And just so the board and the public can know, what is your background? How long have you been doing this, and just what are some of your credentials in this arena?
Okay, I got a BS in chemical engineering in 1972. Between my bachelor's degree and my graduate work, I spent a little over 2 years in the Army, Vietnam era, as a sanitary engineer in the Army Medical Service Corps. And then I went to graduate school. My degrees, my MS and my PhD, are in environmental engineering.
And where have you been employed for most of that your professional life?
Okay, immediately after receiving my PhD, I took a faculty position at the University of Delaware in the agricultural engineering department. I moved to Penn State University in 1984, and I've been in that department in the agricultural and biological engineering department since 1984, and I'm currently Professor Emeritus.
Okay, well, I think you've been accepted as an expert, and I can call you Dr. Elliott all the time, or do you mind if I call you by your nickname you prefer, which is Chip?
Chip is fine.
And anyone else can address you as Chip?
Fine.
Okay. Are you familiar with what is called the sequential batch reactor wastewater treatment process?
Yes, I am.
And can you tell us what is your understanding about its use and the most common formats for its use?
Okay. Sequential batch reactors are a type of biological wastewater treatment. Most systems are continuous flow. That is, the wastewater flows continuously through the system. Sequential batch reactor systems, as the name implies, are batch. A batch of wastewater is treated at a particular time and through several different steps to generate an effluent.
Okay.
Oh, you asked also what are they used for? Primarily they're used for small sanitary wastewater flows or intermittent wastewater flows. They can be used for some industrial wastewaters. For example, food processing. They've been used in pharmaceutical wastewaters, tanneries, various wastewaters that are treatable biologically.
I think you've explained, let's see. Could you tell, I think you explained there are two general types of treatment systems. One is this sequential or batch system, and the other is a continuous process. What normally goes into making the decision as to which you might choose?
Well, in general, it's the size of the facility. As I mentioned, the sequential batch reactor systems tend to be used for relatively small flows. Now, small flows, I guess that's a kind of a relative term. Here, you're talking about 100,000 gallons per day. Wastewater treatment plants vary in size from 10,000 gallons per day up to the largest wastewater treatment plant in the world, which is Chicago Stickney plant, which is 1.2 billion gallons of wastewater per day that is treated. So these are the sequential batch system, because they are in batches, tend to be used for smaller systems.
Are there, how would you distinguish those systems, if that's relevant to making a choice? Is there energy considerations or reliability? How do you compare the two?
Yeah, I mean, there's many decisions that go into deciding what type of system. One would be the flow and composition of the wastewater. One could be energy requirements, reliability, land availability, sludge or biosolids disposal. So there are many different factors that go into choosing a particular system.
How would you assess what might be most appropriate for a system that could include both sanitary and more generalized industrial waste water? What considerations would be relevant to you?
I'm going to object to this line of questioning. Here's the Commonwealth Court's decision in Stewart versus Radnor Township, where the Commonwealth Court specifically said that this zoning hearing board is not the decider of what type of system, sewage system, is to be used. The court, let me hand this out.
I don't disagree, but you can hand it out, but I don't think it's relevant at this point. You put on 3 experts touting the benefits and need for and attributes of a batch reactor system and how it was going to work so well for the wastewaters you were expecting or were possible. So I'm simply responding to what you have already presented as evidence.
I presented a witness in Mr. Ebert who testified to what he designed that would generate the, oh, I'm sorry, that would generate the effluent that would be generated, and his testimony was that that would be regulated by DEP. And that's what this case, and that's what this case,
But there's an objection to testimony he hasn't even given yet.
No, but I don't think you're not disagreeing with that, right?
No. But we just want to let the board know some of the considerations that we think are relevant, both for the DEP process, but particularly for this board to consider as imposing as a special condition.
And just so I'm clear, from what I recall, is the testimony is that this was not going to take in industrial waste.
I'm sorry,
That this system was not going to take in industrial waste.
that's not what we understood. The system, as I understood it, was that if industrial waste were to be generated by a particular facility, it would be specially assessed and handled, maybe pre-treated.
My understanding was that was if it happened by mistake.
Well,
the testimony by Mr. Ebert was exactly what Dr. Elliott said. It is waste that can be treated by a biological system.
Okay, all right.
It's exactly what he testified.
Then I was mistaken. Go ahead.
So I think that it's important that the board hear this. The court opined the zoning hearing board did not have jurisdiction over the method of sewage disposal selected by the property owner, so long as the method was approved by the Department of Environmental Resources and other
What is the
authorities
relevance
having.
of this to the witness's testimony as has been elicited?
You don't disagree with that, right?
no.
Okay, then I don't think, what's the issue?
Well, he shouldn't be testifying to the propriety of the system because that's going to be decided.
Well, let's see if he testifies to that. I don't know if that's what he's going to testify to.
Well, that's what I heard. Why would you do this?
You're making assumptions, Mark, and that's not necessarily
Well, I mean, I
what
think
his
he's basing
testimony.
the assumptions on the report, but
I've read the report. That's what he goes into.
His report includes recommendations that he thinks are missing in what you submitted and are likely to be required, and just wants this board to know that. And additionally, thinks there are some safeguards for the public that this board could reasonably consider imposing as conditions so that there's an adequate baseline. And if you wish to reject that, fine. If you think that falls under this, we can deal with that later, but
I guess Mark's objection is to any testimony that would suggest that another system should be used.
It's not
No,
only,
not
it's not
necessarily.
only that, it's not this, here's what it says. As an accepted method, the board did not have jurisdiction to make findings as to whether the system was a proper selection. It is, quote, "It is not for the zoning hearing board to enforce the technical engineering regulations of the environmental agencies, even though the board may be convinced that an approval might be improvidently granted." So if this board cannot opine on or regulate the type of system, then why is Dr. Elliott going to get into, as he does in his report, all the different aspects of the system that's proposed?
Can we hear his testimony first on the issue, and then?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to hear what he says. I think this is a bit premature. I mean, but I mean, if you're agreeing, Doug, that the board doesn't have any say.
I'm not agreeing to that. I'm agreeing that there's a department approval process that has its own adjudicatory processes associated with it. But I think there are issues the board should be aware of because they were presented proposed
And these are issues
submissions
that
to the
DEP
department.
wouldn't have addressed?
Pardon?
These are issues that DEP wouldn't have addressed?
DEP might, and we just are going to identify things that could be of concern.
Go through them.
And we think are important potentially for the board to impose as a special condition.
Right, but I guess my question is that, and I don't know, I guess it's my question, maybe Dr. Elliott can answer this, but even if the board imposes a condition and DEP says no, you would acknowledge that even if the board imposes a condition that DEP says no to, that the board doesn't have any authority to tell them to do something that DEP won't approve?
I am not agreeing at this point that this decision precludes the board from imposing some special conditions such as a groundwater monitoring requirement.
All right, let's say that that's a condition that goes down, and DEP comes and says, no, you can't put in the groundwater, then you're agreeing that DEP has the final say?
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's what I'm asking, okay.
But I think you should hear some of the concerns
I'm not
that a
disagreeing about that.
specialist in
Yes.
this area has and some of the risks associated with it, because ultimately the board's judgment is based on the ability to say that this is protective of human health and the environment and not adverse to the community. And I just think whether it's the board or the township should ultimately be aware and very active in the department procedures, because I think they're very substantial questions there. So I just want to put them and let the expert put them before you.
Okay.
Perhaps I could make a comment that most wastewater treatment plant inflows contain some industrial waste. If you go to any major municipality, there are going to be industrial wastewaters that are put into the sanitary system. Now, how does a municipality deal with that? They have industrial pre-treatment ordinances. That is, they look at the wastewater and they say, will this negatively impact our treatment plant? Primarily by, say, upsetting the biological system. And at least if I look at I think it's Exhibit 12, the River Point Logistics Center wastewater treatment plant planning module. It seems to have that component in it because it talks about a municipal industrial pre-treatment plant. So, which I think is a good thing. In other words, if you're going to have a tenant coming into the center, you want to say, okay, what wastewaters are they generating, and might they potentially upset the sequential batch reactor system, or if they don't upset that and they get out into the leach field, is there a negative impact, say, on the vegetation that's growing, or on the groundwater?
Interrupt 1 second. I believe that is A7.
Is that 7?
Is that the
The
memorandum?
planning module?
So
No,
just
I believe it is A12. Oh, wait.
12.
the revised planning module was submitted by you as A7, I believe. Just
It
for
is
point of reference.
it is, the planning module is A7.
7,
That's what he
okay.
was looking at.
He's got the right document.
Yeah.
All right. So because it says in here on page 4 of 15, any wastewater that does not meet the requirements for discharge under the MIPP, which is the Municipal Industrial Pretreatment Program, will need to be removed by manifest and disposed at another approved treatment facility. So to me, it says they're looking at any potential wastewater that's generated in the park by any tenant and saying, can this be treated biologically in the sequential batch reactor system?
And that's being done before it gets to the...
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
And
Good.
that's-
Before it gets to the drip field.
Right, before it gets even to the system, right?
Right.
The biological system.
And
Right.
that's the way any municipality, if they say, listen, we're not going to accept your wastewater, so an industry might say, okay, I'm going to have a pretreatment program to get the composition of that wastewater to the point where then the municipality will accept it.
Or ship it out somewhere else.
Or treat it themselves to the point where they can discharge it.
Okay.
Okay.
Have you been active in the management of any land disposal systems, whether it be the design or operation that you can tell us about yourself?
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I'm sorry, Doug.
I said, I'm sorry. I asked Chip if he could tell us if he's been active in the design or teaching about wastewater treatment systems with land disposal components for them, and if so, identify them for us.
Well, in terms of teaching for 25 years, I taught a course at Penn State called Land-Based Waste Disposal, where primarily populated by civil, environmental, chemical engineers, where we design systems for recycling and disposal of effluents and residuals, like the biosolids, for example, on land in a way that's environmentally sound. I continue to serve actually on Penn State's Wastewater Management Committee, which oversees Penn State's called the Living Filter, where they spray irrigate their wastewater on about 600 acres. The university itself has its own treatment plant, generating about 1.6 million gallons per day currently, and all of that effluent is irrigated on crop and forested lands in the vicinity of the university. They don't have a...
What kind of lands?
It's both cropland and forested. So there's two parts of it. Some of it gets sprayed into a forested area, and some of it's used for growing of crops, primarily corn and grasses.
And I think we've, in a sense, already answered this, but could you tell us what the role of the PADEP is in reviewing or permitting such systems? And then I'll ask you, what kinds of issues would they be concerned about, or would it be concerned about?
Okay, well, obviously, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection would have to approve any system, and then also they require reporting. At least at the university, we have a large annual report we do every year, but that also requires, say, certain monitoring frequencies of well water and vegetation and other things.
And can you tell us the kinds of concerns that you believe the department would have that this applicant would have to address in any application to the department? And what you've seen, let's start with that.
Objection, speculation.
How's that speculation? He's an expert.
Speculating on what the department may or will do with regard to the review of this system.
As a designer and operator of these programs, he's perfectly capable of telling and saying what is commonly expected and required.
That's not what you asked.
Well, that's what I'm asking. So if I misspoke,
ask it that way.
ask it that. Yes.
I'm sorry.
One of the primary things would be, does the treatment plant meet certain effluent requirements? That is, they might say, okay, you have to have less than a certain amount of BOD, which is biological oxygen demand, or total suspended solids or total nitrogen content, or total phosphorus content. So there'd be an array of criteria that need to be met in the effluent prior to land application.
And what are some of the elements, as you looked at the module that the applicant submitted, that you thought either were missing or insufficient or might be subject to question, such that they might expect a response from the department seeking more data?
Same objection, speculation as to what the department's going to do.
He's an expert.
What?
He's an expert. He's testifying. The question's about what is he saying is deficient from that application, from the planning project. Overruled, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Based on the manuals that DEP has produced, as well as EPA documents, for a system like this, they're going to have to do a monthly water balance.
What kind of water balance?
Monthly. You can do it on any time period, but traditionally it's done on a monthly basis, and that's largely because our precipitation is typically, it's easily accessible on a monthly basis. So if you consider a box, a soil box, if you would, with vegetation on it, you have to say, you have to do a water balance, and you say, okay, here's the precipitation that's coming in the month. Here's the amount of evapotranspiration, that is evaporation as well as transpiration. Transpiration is the uptake of water by the roots and evaporation from the leaf surfaces, okay? Also in that water balance is runoff. That is what's actually going to run off the surface, and then you have deep percolation, or what infiltrates into the soil. And a requirement of these systems is that you have no runoff of the effluent. That's prohibited. Now you can have natural runoff, you can't control that, but there can't be runoff of the effluent. So you do this monthly water balance, and you come up with amount that you can apply per month. And it's going to vary. Why? Because the precipitation varies. And the temperature varies. Therefore, you know, in the summertime, you have lots of evapotranspiration. Right now, the plants are transpiring a lot of water because they're fully grown and they're taking up that water and it's leaving. So those things vary on a monthly basis. So you actually need to determine how much effluent can be put on in any month, and it varies over the year. They may also impose a requirement that in the wintertime you cannot apply effluent because the vegetation is dormant. Why is the vegetation important? Because it's taking up some of the nitrogen. So you not only have to do a water balance, but you have to do a nitrogen balance, because you don't want nitrate in the groundwater exceeding the drinking water standard, which is 10 milligrams per liter of nitrate nitrogen.
And Dr. Elliott, just so I'm clear, is those tests would be something that you would do after the drip irrigation was installed?
Yes,
okay.
But you design it in such a way that you don't exceed that percolate being any more than, they might even be more conservative, but it can't be any more than the drinking water standard.
Right, but that monthly test that you're referring to, or the monthly two tests, the nitrogen and the water balancing tests, those would be tests that would be continued to do for the life of the system, essentially.
That's part of the process design.
Okay.
Is there a storage component ever considered or needed?
Yes, as part of that whole process, you end up determining your storage requirements. That is, there are times in the year when you cannot apply effluent. For example, as I said, often the DEP will say in the winter, you can't apply effluent because we now have no vegetation to take up nitrogen, therefore more is going to go down in deep percolate. So typically you might have to store the wastewater, say from December through February, for example, and then you apply that wastewater that you've stored in the summertime when you can actually put on more because much of that water is going up in evapotranspiration.
Did anything jump out at you in the module that suggests to you that they may be requested to have more storage than they proposed?
Well, on page 6 of 15 on Exhibit 7, it says the PADEP requires 3 days of storage capacity of treated effluent for facilities that rely on drip irrigation as the sole means of effluent disposal. I don't think you can make that determination without doing the water balance. So I'm not sure where that came from. I'm not sure what DEP document or what source that particular statement came from.
Are you familiar with any kind of norms that are associated with storage requirements? And if so, tell us about them.
Well, if you look at different states, they vary from 3 days in Florida, where obviously you don't have any freezing conditions, to I think it's 140 days in North Dakota. So in northern climates, you're going to have to store the effluent longer, largely because the system is not suitable for application in the wintertime.
On that particular issue, and I'm just trying to clarify so that we can kind of move this along, but is that something that's determined by DEP once it's reviewed? Like the storage requirement? Who sets that, I guess is my question.
That's part of the process design.
Okay. But if I design it for 3 days and I submit it to DEP, can DEP tell me, no, Chad, you need 10 days? Based on the water balancing,
right.
Based on that, right?
Yeah.
That process is evaluated, is what you're saying.
That's right. In fact, I would suggest that the reason there aren't more, at least spray irrigation systems in the state is because the DEP has said you need to store your effluent in the wintertime.
So I guess my question is, no matter what the applicant put in as far as storage in their plan, DEP would determine what they would need?
Right.
Okay, all right.
From your review of the module and any other exhibits provided by the applicant and in some cases challenged by us or our experts, do you see likely areas where other data or additional data might be required?
I suspect, I feel pretty confident that the DEP is going to require more soil pits in the actual spray field area. I realize that a number of soil pits were dug in all over the whole farm, but now that the spray fields have actually been designated, they're going to ask for more soil pits. And my basis for saying that is, in my report, okay, what I did was I took the web soil survey and I looked at the soil series that are on the spray fields. And some of those soils, at least in what they have as the typical profile, would have characteristics different that have been found in some of the soil pit data that was collected. I can give you a specific example that's in my report.
Yeah, in reference to page when you find it, if you would.
Yeah, that would be, it's at the top of page 4, or at least, yeah, good.
Page 4 of your report?
It's the top of page 4 of my report, I-26.
Above where it says wastewater characteristics?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, if you, I looked at field number 5, and that appears to be largely the manliest soil series. And if you want to see that, you can look back at the addendum, which is the final 11
Yeah,
pages.
it's about 2/3 of the way back.
The final 11 pages of my document, I should probably explain what that is. I took the web soil survey, and you can put a boundary around an area and say, is this area suitable for slow rate treatment of wastewater? And I think they define slow rate as anywhere from 1 to 5 inches per week, which encompasses the maximum that DEP allows, which is 2 inches per week, as well as the proposal, which I think is about 1.2 inches per week, the proposed system. And in field 5, if you happen to look at that figure, you see it says MAB. Okay, that's where field 5 is primarily located. That's the manliest B. The B stands for the slope of that soil, so that would be 3 to 8% slope. That's what the uppercase letters after the MA mean. And according to the typical, now I need to go to page 10 of my report, or page 9 and 10, is that manliest series soil.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Page 9 and 10 of my report has the USDA.
I heard that. You just said some kind of soil.
Manliest.
Oh, manliest, MANLIUS. That's just the name of the series. And if you go to the top of page 10, I should probably explain, what they have is a typical profile for the soil. It starts at A, which is the surface. AP, the P means that's the plow layer, so 0 to 8 centimeters. And then going down in the soil, they number these, what they call soil horizons, A, B, C, and you get down to R, which is bedrock. All right, that's at the top of page 10. Unfortunately, this soil description is in centimeters, not inches. So,
I'm sorry,
unfortunately, this particular soil's description, the horizons, that is the distance below the surface, is in centimeters, not inches. Most of them are in inches. But, so, for example, the third line down on page 10, that says bedrock, R, that's the bedrock, and it says bedrock is at 36 inches. All right, so there's no more soil there, that's basically the bedrock. And then I just compared that with, for example, 2 of the soil pits within field 5 that are numbered 82 and 90 of Exhibit 7. So if you go to page 8 of 15 of Exhibit 7, it has all the soils, as the soil information. And the first and third ones are test pit 82 and test pit 90. And one says the limiting zone's at 43 plus inches and the other's at 45 plus inches. So I'm just pointing out there's a discrepancy between what soil you would predict is there and what was found in the test pits. That's not unusual because soil series are only approximately good. You know, you're not sure what's there unless you do a test pit. So my point is they're going to need to do more testing when there's a discrepancy between what they found and what the web soil survey says should be there.
And is, just to follow up, my series of questions, is that something that DEP would require when they reviewed it?
I suspect they will. Okay. Because, I mean, one of the fields only has 1 soil pit in it, so they're probably going to require, at least 2 soil pits per acre.
I'm going to object again, this is speculation.
But he's an expert. Based on your experience, that's what you feel like that they're going to have to...
Many states require...
I didn't hear any expertise of actually actually getting systems permitted. He's got an unbelievable resume, but I didn't hear that he's got any on-the-ground experience having systems permitted. So I just want to know on what basis he's going to speculate as to what DEP's going to do.
Well, there's one advantage to knowing the fundamental chemical, biological, and physical aspects of these systems, and that is you don't have to re-educate yourself every time you see a new system. And also, I've interacted with the DEP, and I'm familiar with the regulations and policies that DEP imposes on these systems.
I mean, Mark, you're not going to disagree that if DEP comes and says you need, but I'm saying you're not disagreeing that if DEP comes and says you need to dig 2 more test pits, you're going to dig the test pits. Nobody's going to question that, right?
If they come,
right.
The testimony is they were out there when the test pits were dug.
No, a different issue.
That's fine, but I'm saying he's saying in the future, based on what he's reviewed, in his opinion, that additional test pits, that DEP may require additional test pits. If DEP requires additional test pits, you're not going to object to them doing additional test pits? Of course not. Okay.
Yeah, most of the test pits are outside the drip area.
Right, and if DEP requires additional ones, I think the applicant's going to comply with that if that's what they're required to do. Okay. Can we, if it's specific on this issue about the test pits?
You said 5 minutes ago, something about the water quality would be drinkable quality.
No, I don't think he ever said that.
He said it to you. You were having a conversation, and you said the water has to be drinkable to go into it. And I wanted to clarify.
Okay.
I didn't hear that.
I guess what I was saying was if you think about your soil profile, you are not allowed to have water percolating below that doesn't meet the nitrate drinking water standard.
Soil has to clean it.
Has to clean it to the point where it meets the nitrate drinking water standard.
And that would be before it enters the groundwater table or the rock structure?
Yes.
Just tell us.
Right.
Okay, and the way you calculate that is it would have to be a certain nitrate level when it goes into the ground.
Right.
That would be the only way you would be able to control that, right?
Right, and also the vegetation. Plants love nitrate.
Sure.
Right? So the plant roots are going to take up nitrate, so you take that into account when you do a nitrogen balance.
Which is why you said that in the winter, in certain environments, they're not permitted to discharge because those plants are not there.
The plants are dormant, they're not taking
allow,
up nitrogen. Some of the nitrogen goes to the atmosphere.
So as long as the water met the nitrate level that was required for it to get to the drinking water nitrate standard that you said, once it goes through the entire system, that's the level it would have to get to before it went through the ground.
Right, but below, right, the renovating, repeat your question.
Well, I guess my question is, you would take into consider the type of vegetation, the climate, the amount of, I think you said transfer or I don't know what these, yeah, right. Right, you would take that into consideration to determine what level that water would have to be at from a nitrate level standpoint before it went into the ground and
correct.
Right? Because if it was higher than what you estimated or calculated it would get to once it went through the ground, then obviously it would be too high once it went through the entire system, right? And if it was less, everybody's okay.
Right.
Okay, all right, understood.
Just to see if we can get close to wrapping this up, so we might even finish. Are there conditions or concerns that you would express that you think would be appropriate, not only for this board, obviously maybe for the department or DEP to consider, but for this board to consider? And if so, what would they be? Yeah, yes. And I think we distributed.
Is this
I-27?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, these are some issues that I thought would be good, since there is concern about potential impact of the drip irrigation system on well waters, the neighbors' well water supplies. And I thought an important thing to do would be just initiate a baseline water testing program to establish what the existing quality conditions are in the groundwater.
You're talking about in the wells of the people nearby.
Correct.
So you have to, I'm sorry, you have to go and you have to get permission to go on their property and test.
That's correct. And obviously you can do different levels of testing. A typical, a first level test would be, for example, they might do total coliforms, E. coli, total dissolved solids, pH, and nitrate, nitrogen. That's a standard package that they offer through Ag Analytical Services Lab at Penn State. And of course, you could do more extensive testing. You could test for metals or organics. That's probably not necessary, every month or whatever, but at least there should be some. I think it's important to establish a baseline of what's actually in the wells now, and that would be beneficial to the applicant as well.
Right, and the thought process would be is that you would compare that baseline to a test that happened a year from now. You're a year after the system went in, and you could tell if the levels went up, you would know exactly what the problems were.
Right.
Okay, understood.
And
just one question on that particular area. What range of properties would you suggest including in that?
Well, DEP actually has a baseline water testing program where they test for 27 different analytes. That's the word ANALYTES, meaning the thing you're analyzing for.
I guess I probably asked a better question. What territory, how far from the drip irrigation field would you suggest that testing be conducted to get the baseline?
Well, I was just suggesting the neighbors, the contiguous neighbors anyway.
The ones that are essentially down slope.
Down gradient.
Okay.
Because you've already had expertise on the groundwater flow system.
And the thought process would be is those would be the properties most affected by the system.
Right. And then part of that, I guess, could be the actual analysis of the monitoring wells, which I believe are numbers 2 through 5, which are on that east and southeast portion of the proposed drip field. And that's also where the concerned neighbors are.
Okay.
Can you tell us who now owns or controls those wells, to your knowledge?
Well, they're on the property. They're on the angle property.
And I mean, I think just from my understanding, you are aware that the proposal is that this property and the entire system be turned over to, I think maybe technically there's a municipal authority still in existence, but perhaps either the municipal authority or the township.
Right.
Is that your understanding of what the proposal was?
As I read this, yes.
Is that the system would be turned over?
Right.
Yeah, okay. And you would agree that the authority or the township, whoever owns or controls the system and owns that property, could monitor those wells?
Right.
Okay.
No, I think it was a good thing. They put in 12 monitoring wells around that property, so.
You would also agree that it would be a good thing that someone other than the applicant be monitoring those wells, right?
Right.
Okay. I mean, you suggested that in number 3.
Right. Because quite honestly, for legal reasons, you often have to have a chain of custody.
Sure.
For those samples. So you don't want the actual homeowners to be saying, oh, I took a well sample.
Right.
Was there an additional recommendation? And I have one other question after that.
Well, the other one was something that's, in a sense, in the module where you have an independent third-party evaluation of the wastewater is expected to be generated by tenants that might come into the, into the area, into the industrial park.
Is that also something that you think that either the municipal authority or the township would be reviewing?
It could, yeah, because again, you don't want to impact that security.
Yeah, I mean, typically, that if a new tenant came in, the analysis of what type of wastewater that particular tenant would generate, that analysis would be done typically by the owner or the operator of the system, right?
Right.
Right. So you'd say, hey, I need 10 EDUs for whatever project I have as a tenant. you're going to evaluate the impact and the type of waste that that's going to be
Right.
when that tenant applies for those EDUs.
And that would be a requirement of acceptance of that tenant.
Sure. Yep, understood.
And lastly, I think in your report, but you tell me if I'm wrong, I think at one point you addressed potential surface flows and what kind of concern that would be in any proposed sewage disposal system. Is there a potential, given soils and soil variability in the geology, for there to be surface flow from a system like this?
If the system is designed correctly, there shouldn't be any runoff of the effluent. That is, it should go vertically downward, not horizontally.
And I believe you said that you testified that DEP, that's against DEP regulations to have that runoff.
That's a requirement.
From right, so if there was runoff for this particular project, they could.
It'd be an NOV.
Okay.
If they would, notice of violation from the DEP.
Okay. And if, just going back to this, if the municipal authority or the township owned or controlled the system, that would be something that they would monitor to determine if there is overflow?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Before we conclude, is there anything else you would, in your report that you would wish to share with us now that we might have missed? I can't.
Well, there is another way that you could, in fact, determine the connectivity between the drip fields and the neighboring wells. You could use fluorescent dyes. You could inject those into the monitoring wells and then test for them
in the individual,
the neighbors' wells. That not only establishes or doesn't establish a connectivity, but it also tells you the time of flow, which is very helpful, because you might say, okay, well, there might be a pollutant in there, but you know what, it takes 5 years to get from the drip fields to their wells, so it's going to be degraded in that time frame.
And that would also be something that could be monitored by the authority or the township. They could conduct those tests whenever they want, periodically?
They could, but I'm thinking you probably don't only need to do it once.
Okay. Okay.
Are your opinions and conclusions that you've given us orally and that are contained in your report based on principles and methods that are generally accepted in your field?
Yes.
And do you hold these opinions with reasonable certainty?
I do.
Well, then I would move this honorable board to accept into evidence Mr. Elliott's report identified as I-26.
No objection.
And the supplement identified as I-27.
No objection.
And then I concluded.
Okay. I'd like to get started on my cross. Yep. Dr. Elliott, in the first page of your report, the first sentence under summary opinion, I'd like to read the first sentence. Landscape irrigation to treat and dispose of wastewater effluent is a long-standing practice in Pennsylvania throughout the United States that, if properly designed and managed, can be protective of human health and the environment, period. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
And that's your opinion, is it not?
That is.
So I really appreciate your testimony. I'd like to get into one aspect of your testimony that I think we have a disagreement about. It's my understanding, and I will just tell you this, surprise for a lawyer, but I'm involved in drip irrigation and spray irrigation for 25 years. So I have some knowledge of the terms that you used. So it's my understanding from your testimony that Penn State is all it's all spray irrigation.
That's correct.
And Penn State's really a center for the study of spray irrigation, is it not?
It is.
And your experience, I think, is all with spray irrigation. You've described you've been at Penn State since the 80s, 84. This really started to come around 20, 25 years ago, and Penn State has stayed with spray irrigation, correct?
That's correct.
And from your testimony, I'm not sure that you have very much, and I don't mean this to denigrate, I don't believe from your testimony that you have much experience with regard to drip irrigation. Is
That's
that
correct. That's correct.
Okay. So, in your description of spray irrigation, you talked about nitrogen uptake, meaning that when the water is sprayed, if the effluent still contains nitrogen at over 10 milligrams per liter, in the regulations, credit is given for nitrogen uptake, is it not?
It is.
And when you have spray irrigation, as you said, when you get to the cold months, as you described, North Dakota, even here, you need 3 months worth of storage, correct?
That's correct.
And
In
that's-
Pennsylvania, that's typically what they would require.
There are variations, but it's basically, my experience, it's 3 months of storage. It's huge lagoons, sometimes millions of gallons of storage in a big, big lagoon, correct?
Right, depending on the flow, depending on that.
Yeah.
How many thousand or million gallons are
And we're
produced per
talking
day.
about for spray irrigation.
We are.
Okay.
Now, that's not true with drip irrigation. Drip irrigation is used 12 months a year, is it not? If you know.
Mm,
Do you know?
I know, it can be.
And
It's not everywhere. Some places, the conditions are cold enough where the soil freezing actually causes a problem.
well, did you read Mr. Ebert's testimony?
Not totally, I read part of it.
Did you read the planning module?
Yeah, I did.
Did you read Jeff Clark's hydrogeological study?
I did.
And I guess you read our soil testing report also.
I did.
Okay, so on page 15, I'm sorry, 6 of 15.
Of the
in
planning module?
In the planning module. You criticized what Mr. Ebert said here.
Page 16.
In fact, when you criticized it, you referred to spray irrigation and not drip irrigation. So this says under effluent storage, the PADEP requires 3 days of storage capacity of treated effluent for facilities that rely upon drip irrigation as the sole means of effluent disposal. Now, do you know that that's incorrect?
Well, let me ask you, well, no, I can't ask questions. I don't know where that number came from.
Well, let me just tell you this. Did you read Mr. Ebert's curriculum vitae?
No.
Well, you would have seen that he's been doing this. He represents 15 or 16 sewer authorities, and he has gotten permitted many, many of these systems and is an expert in that.
You're testifying, Mark, come on.
Well, no, I'm telling you what was
Ask him a
in
question.
his Did you see that in his resume?
I was familiar with, there were 3 other systems that were mentioned, I think 2 of them in Chester County or whatever that he's involved in now.
Yeah. So you don't know that what is said here is incorrect, do you?
No, I don't know the source of that information.
Thank you. Okay. Now, you answered a question from somebody where you were talking about the renovation of the treated effluent by the soil. That's sometimes appropriate in in spray irrigation, is it not?
Yes.
It's really to get rid of the nitrogen, isn't it?
That and other components that absorb to the soil particles.
Well, if you read this planning module, Mr. Ebert, it says that the SBR will be designed to create an effluent that is under 10 milligrams per liter of nitrogen. Did you see that?
I did.
So if this system creates an effluent with less than 10 milligrams per liter of nitrogen, the soil, there's no need for soil renovation by the soil here.
That's true.
Not only that this is an agricultural field now, isn't it?
I believe it is.
You would assume that because of the fertilizers, etc., the nitrogen level in that groundwater would be above 10 milligrams per liter, wouldn't you?
Well, in fact, they tested 4 wells, A1, A3, A6, and A11, and the average was 11.4 milligrams per liter.
So if we're going to dispose of already renovated or treated effluent that is at less than 10 milligrams per liter, that would reduce the average of the nitrogen in the soil as it got to the edge of the property, wouldn't it?
It would, as long as they are not adding additional fertilizer to the grass.
To what?
To the grass that they're growing on the site.
Well, did you read the program that's laid out in, if you get to page, let's go to page 11 of 15, and it goes on for.
You're talking about in the module, planning module.
I'm sorry, yes, thank you. I mean, drip field vegetative management plan. A detailed vegetation establishment and management plan will be submitted in accordance with PADP requirements with the Water Quality Management Part 2 permit application for the drip disposal field. Now, are you aware that that type of soil management plan is required not with the planning module, but with the Part 2 water quality management permit that has to be issued before the drip fields are constructed?
Yes, that's part of something that has to be submitted.
So that management plan will be submitted to
Right.
DEP.
Right.
And Mr. Ebert talks about what's going to be in that plan.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go on for pages, but he summarizes preventing soil compaction, soil nutrient analysis, limiting and fertilizing, or liming and fertilizing, nitrogen balance calculations, vegetation selection, and on and on. This is a pretty extensive plan here on pages 11, 12,
You're testifying, Mark.
13, isn't it? It's cross-examination, please.
You're saying it's a pretty extensive, you're categorizing it, and let him answer.
All right, yes.
I would
You
like,
considered it extensive.
That's a pretty extensive vegetation management plan, is it not?
right. Now, what I didn't see in there was what is going to be the final disposition of the grass that's harvested from this site?
I know he testified to it. I don't remember whether it's in here or not. I believe that Fred testified to it, but I don't remember what's going to be done. I think, no, I won't speculate.
Okay. Could I bring up something else then? Under the detailed vegetation and management plan, one of the items listed is a nitrogen balance, says nitrogen balance calculations. And then if you go over to the next page, 12, it says, as the wastewater treatment plant will involve denitrification, there is no need for nitrogen balance calculations.
Well, then DEP will catch him on that. But
Well-
isn't that true that if we're disposing of effluent, it's under the safe drinking standard of 10 milligrams per liter? That's gotta make the water in the ground better than it is before, doesn't it?
Assuming you are not fertilizing it, which it says you will be fertilizing.
Okay, but as Chad asked you a number of times, that'll all be taken care of or regulated by DEP. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, a couple other things that I think they're mostly the distinction between drip irrigation and spray irrigation. You talked about control of runoff, and I believe you were talking from your experience with spray irrigation, where you're actually out there in the fields. Are you familiar with Buckingham Township by any chance?
No.
No?
No.
They're very extensive spray irrigation. So, in the spray irrigation, the water comes through pipes, the spray nozzles or whatever are elevated, and it's sprayed. And because it's on the ground, it can run off, or it can get rained on and run off, right?
Correct.
And that's your concern. That's not true with regard to drip irrigation, is it?
It's much less of a problem with drip irrigation, but I can suggest a scenario where you might actually get runoff. If you are operating your drip irrigation system and the soils are already saturated, that effluent might go laterally or might go up instead of down.
So, and I'm sure you're right, and that's why there's all the testing that's required. Fred, in his testimony, talked about the monthly, the yearly, the 5-year certification by an engineer. That you're familiar, all of that in the DEP requirements, are you not?
Right. You're going to have a certified operator for this system.
You absolutely will have that, and Fred testified to that. Now, I'm a little confused on one thing that you've said. You've talked about water balance. You've talked about water balance, and you've said that we need a water balance testing or program. Did you read Fred Clark's hydrogeological analysis?
Yes, I'm not sure he addressed water balance in there.
Exactly what he did was he addressed mounding.
Oh,
And
yes.
he addressed mounding, and he addressed loading factors, and he applied all of the DEP criteria to set maximums of the amount of water that can be dispersed through the drip irrigation system. Did you read all of that?
Not all of it. I'm familiar they did a mounding calculation.
But in this situation, doesn't that, and the continuation of that kind of testing going forward, doesn't that satisfy what you call as a water balance testing and management?
I think that's largely what the drip irrigation system is going to do to the water table.
Well, isn't that what when you talk about water balance and what you talked about a couple of minutes ago, if so much water is going to get in there that it's going to saturate the ground, and you're worried about that? Isn't that what the water balance is all about?
Yes. I mean, they didn't, I don't think vegetation goes into a water balance.
No, I
I
don't
mean, the
either.
mounding analysis.
Yeah. But his mounding analysis is even more sophisticated than that. It applies DEP's regulations, and it's very complicated. I don't begin to understand it. But from having him testify a number of times, what his testimony is that how much water can Fred's drip irrigation system put into those soils? Accepting that that's what it is, doesn't that satisfy your requirement?
I think it does. I think that it would be interesting to see if the DEP would allow that in lieu of a water balance, the traditional monthly water balance.
Dr. Elliott, thank you very much.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, so we don't have to bring it back up.
Yeah, that's what I was, that's why I was asking.
You have made a recommendation for some additional testing. Is your recommendation that the testing that is done, this baseline testing, encompass more than what DEP may require as a minimum?
You're talking about the testing of the other properties, wells?
Correct.
Okay.
Your opinion is there should be a baseline testing of the properties around and as well as the soils, correct?
If the system were confined to sanitary waste, perhaps the minimum requirements would be adequate. If there's a concern that there might be manufacturing waste of some sort, then some other testing should also be done.
In your review of what testing has been done, it doesn't address heavy metals, correct?
That's correct.
It doesn't address forever chemicals.
Right.
And so as we sit here today, we don't know whether that is in the system or in the soils that are being projected for this project, correct?
Right.
So would it be your opinion that that would be good practice to test for those kinds of things, which we don't know whether they exist or not, because putting 100,000 gallons of water on top of those could impact the drinking water?
Right. I mean, you get to the point where you have to make a decision, is it worth the expense of doing some of that testing? So you mentioned the forever chemicals, PFAS. It's about $700 a sample. So you may say, well, okay, well, at least we'll do a few of those, but we're probably not going to do those routinely.
Right. You're trying to establish a baseline of what's there now because
Right.
of people's concerns about what might be getting to their drinking water. Is that fair?
That's fair.
And so is it your opinion that this sort of more extensive testing in more locations should be conducted?
Yes. I mean, strategically. You don't want to, you just don't have the resources to go out and test everybody's well for every possible parameter. And so obviously to have some, again, baseline is the important word. What is the baseline water quality condition? There are some parameters that are going to be a lot more important because some you wouldn't need to do because there's no chance that it's going to be there. I mean, the Forever Chemicals, Pennsylvania now has drinking water standards or regulatory advisory levels for two of those, PFOS and PFOA, the two that tend to be the ones that are regulated.
And so those are the kind of things you would at least test in part on this site.
Yeah, again, you might want to do, you're probably going to find that they're either non-detectable. And those levels are parts per trillion, by the way. A part per trillion is 1 second in 32,700 years. So you're talking about really small numbers that are even difficult to determine analytically with any precision.
Those are all the questions I have, thank you.
Any other party status? I know I asked that. Okay. Board members?
I just
Go
want
ahead,
to thank this gentleman. It's nice to hear an expert. The previous expert wasn't an expert. Thank you very much for your...
Can I ask one question? Those testings that we talked about, and I think I asked this before, but those could be conducted by whoever the operator is of the system, right? Whoever the end result is.
The monitoring wells
Correct.
on the site?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's it. We probably do have to figure out, go ahead.
One question on kind of redirect. Is there anything that you've responded to that as you kind of think back that you want to elaborate on in any way where you think you may have not given as complete or full an answer as you might? And if not, fine.
I can't think of anything.
Okay. All right, we need to figure out another date. Yeah, we can go off the record, sorry. Well, we can do a motion to adjourn. No, not yet. All right, let's figure out dates. We've been doing sometime mid-month, so I have.
Thank you very much.
It's August 19th, 20th, 21st, right? 22nd. All right, so I got August 19th, and I know Mark's probably. Mark, we're just figuring out dates for the next hearing.
I probably would only call two citizen lay witnesses just to conclude our testimony.
Okay.
So I don't have much.
Okay. The 19th work?
That's a Monday, I think, right?
I'll get it over.
Okay. Doug?
Of August?
August 19th, yeah.
That's a Monday.
Monday.
I am currently free.
And Monday, I've got a planning commission meeting. I can't do
Okay.
Monday.
How about the 20th, the Tuesday?
20th, I can do Tuesday.
20th?
Yeah.
All right. Everybody okay with that?
So-
Board members, Mr. Rigo? Okay.
I want to understand what Doug said.
It doesn't sound like he's calling Mr. Cole as an expert.
Right. I'm not planning to now. I think we've covered it all with Mr. Elliott.
I agree with you.
Okay.
Okay.
So you have two lay witnesses,
Right.
and then I know Mr. Cousins indicated that he may have at least the township, somebody from the township engineers
Correct.
office
If I have a report.
by then.
Then
Okay.
next week or two.
All right. And just so we're clear, if Mr. Cousins does not have the report from the township engineer, the plan will be to go through Mr. Blasey's lay witnesses and then either start public comment, or if, I don't know if any of the people that requested party status have witnesses that they intend to call, but that would be the time to do it. Just so that everybody's aware of what the process is going to be.
I'm sorry, say that last thing.
It's gonna be, we're gonna go through your two, we're gonna finish with you. If you have two lay witnesses, we're gonna go through them. If Mr. Cousins' expert report is done by then, which I hope it will be, we're gonna go through to his witness. If not, we're gonna go either to public comment, or if any of the other individuals that requested party status have any witnesses, we'll go through that.
I want to talk to Fred.
You decide, yeah, if you have any rebuttal,
I-
you can do that
I'm
after.
With
Okay.
Dr. Elliott's testimony tonight, I'm not sure that I need.
Okay. Okay? Sounds like a plan. So can we be here on the 20th? Yes. All right, we'll be here on the 20th, August 20th, 7 o'clock. This is the notice, just like every other meeting we've done. There's not gonna be another posting of this meet, of the next meeting on the 20th.
Firehouse?
Firehouse here, yep. All right, any questions?
Well,
Back here, correct.
I have one last question.
Yes.
Mark offered this opinion. I don't think he marked it as evidence. He just.
Do you want to mark this, Mark?
I don't think so.
Okay, no,
Okay.
he's not even gonna mark it.
So then I would move for the admission of Dr. I want to move for the admission of Dr. Elliott's report, I-26. Okay.
Yeah, no objection, we're good.
I said at an earlier time, I said at an earlier time, I may want to submit findings of fact and conclusions of law. I do not want to do that.
Here's what I'm going to request. I'm going to request from every party a list of every exhibit that you submitted, just so that I have the official copy, so that if and when this gets appealed, I have so that it's easy for me to identify each of the exhibits, and I don't have to go back to the transcripts.
Tina, do you have all of them?
We do. That's part of the problem. So I'm just gonna ask that if each party can just give to me, and it doesn't have to be, it can be whenever. It
I
can be at the
created it,
end.
I just want to check its reading, and I was going to distribute it to everyone. I do have one missing exhibit I can mention. I don't think was offered, unless it was that list of 8 sites. It would have been Intervenor 9.
Okay.
I don't show any Intervenor 9, so if anyone does.
All right. He's saying he said I-9, he doesn't have a copy of it, so if we have a copy, we can go back. No, I is him, it's his exhibit.
I have all of yours, Mark, I think. I've been recording them. I'll send that list around too.
I know, and can I ask, just before next meeting, if we can just have a list of all of the exhibits so that we can clear that up now, rather than waiting till, I'm expected to write this opinion and then it be.
It's our position that we would like to submit findings of fact.
Here's what I would suggest. It sounds like we'll have at least one other meeting. We're gonna have obviously the next meeting. Doesn't sound like we're gonna be able to get through that. I'm gonna ask that those be submitted, because I don't know, you can submit findings of fact and conclusions of law that are based on your expert report if you want. I'm gonna ask that those be submitted by that next meeting.
Not by August 20th.
Not by August 20th, whatever meeting date we choose after that. Because, and then at that point, even if we don't finish on that date, at least you could submit, you have those submitted, and if you want to amend them or add to them, and we have to come back for a third hearing from then, we can, it's not going to delay you at all.
No, if Adrian's going to do that, I just want to
Yeah.
reserve the right to respond to it.
You can do it, like I said, as long as it's before the last meeting where the decision made, I think that would be okay.
So we have one more meeting.
We have one more meeting. We're going to get through the rest of Doug's witnesses, potentially Adrian's. If not Adrian's, public comment, which I expect to take, a little while. So I anticipate there being a following meeting after that. I'm asking that by that following meeting, whatever date we decide when we meet on the 20th, that by that following date, we have findings of fact, conclusions of law, that sort of thing that we submitted by then.
How much time does public comment have
Let's see. Here's the thing. If it becomes redundant, obviously we've gone on, a great deal with this case. If it becomes redundant, where we have people standing up and saying the same thing 15 different times, probably going to be a little bit more limited. We're probably going to be a little more limited if people are getting up and saying the same thing every time, right? It's not going to be 10 minutes. I don't want to necessarily put a strict time limit on it, but if it becomes a problem, which I understand that the Board of Supervisors meetings, it becomes a problem sometimes, and that you do have a time limit on it, I'm trusting everyone can be adults here and we can kind of move through that. But if you're up there and you start grandstanding and it's going to be 10 minutes and you're getting in fights with different people, we're not going to do that, okay? It's just going to be cut off. All right, so I'm trusting everyone can get up there and express their thoughts about it without me having to be a babysitter and say, hey, you know, you've gone on long enough, but I guess we'll see. So.
Many of us have been here for every single one, and we like our.
Understood, understood. Did you request party status? Okay. Okay.
Did you give a time? Was it 7?
7 o'clock, yeah, yeah. Yeah, every meeting's 7 o'clock, okay? Motion to adjourn? Doc.